call this meeting to order, the North Huron Council meeting. Confirmation of the agenda, the Council of the Township of North Huron accept the agenda for the October 21st, 2019 council meeting as amended to include a resolution for section 34-17 on the Planning Act on amendment item 6.2 and bylaw number 98-2019. Do I have a mover? Treb, seconder. Paul, all in favor? Carries. Disclosure of pecuniary interests. Go ahead, Treb.
Yes, Ray Bailey and council, I just want to let you all know here that I'll be declaring a conflict on item 7.7.1, the restructuring proposal for the child care department. As my wife is currently an employee of the township and in the child care department, so I won't be voting on that discussion or having any participation in the discussion at all.
Thank you, Trevor. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on. Public comments. This is an opportunity for the public to step up to the podium, give us your name and address, and take 2 minutes to talk about anything that's on the agenda tonight. So if there's anybody in the audience that would like to do that? Seeing
I
none.
need to hear what you have to say first.
Well, this is the only time that the public can speak. That's the whole thing, unless you have a delegation.
Oh,
You'll get the hang of it as we move on through the years.
yeah.
Seeing none, hearing none. Number 5, consent agenda, that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby adopts consent items 5.1.1, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.1.2 to 5.3.8 for information. Do I have a mover? I have Anita. Do I have a seconder? I have Rick. Would anybody like to speak to anything on those? Seeing no one, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Public meetings and hearings and delegations. Barbara Hall, Director of Social and Property Services, and Christine Hoffman, House Services Manager, County of Huron, Affordable Housing Programs. Thank you for coming out, ladies, and we'll hand the floor to you.
Should I sit at the table?
Yep.
Good evening, I'm Christine Hoffman. I'm the Housing Services Manager with the County of Huron's Housing Department. And with me is Barbara Hall, the Director. So I'm here tonight, and thank you for inviting us to discuss some of the housing programs we currently have with the County of Huron. And at the end, if you have any questions, I'm sure we'd be happy to answer them for you. Is our presentation?
Yep, it's on the desktop.
It was a test, I failed. That's not a good start, is it? We are just coming out. Yeah, that one. Okay, perfect, thank you. So in Huron County, we offer several different housings. We offer a rent geared to income housing program. We as well offer some affordable housing programs. I'm just going to go through what we currently do have. So Huron County Housing Corporation is our rent geared to income housing that we have in the county. It has been around for many, many years. It's one of our oldest programs. So we currently have 415 units in the whole county of Huron. In North Huron in Wingham, we have 64 one-bedroom units, and we also have 10 family units. One of the buildings is the seniors only, and in family units, there are 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units. We as well in the county give funding to 4 nonprofits and 1 cooperative housing provider. The nonprofits are in Vanastra and Goderich, Exeter, Belmore, and Second Stage Housing, which is operated out of Goderich, Clinton, and Exeter. We also run affordable housing programs, new builds and renovations. So in that program, we have created 57 new units since 2009 and 12 one-bedroom units that are currently under construction at Strand Court in Godrich. We also offer rent supplement units. And a rent supplement is paid to a landlord on behalf of a household in need of rental assistance. So a rent calculation is done based on year-to-income, and then as a county, we supplement the rent up to what the maximum rent is to make the rent affordable for the persons living in the unit. We also have a housing allowance program that provides a $250 monthly subsidy to low to moderate income households to assist with their monthly rent and utilities. We're currently assisting 96 people in the county with that program, and that subsidy is paid directly to the tenant themselves. We have an Ontario Renovates program. That is a forgivable loan of up to $10,000 to low to moderate income households for home repairs. To date, we've assisted with 119 households in the county, and as I said, that's forgivable. So over a period of 10 years for the Ontario Renovates, they don't have to pay it back if they stay in their home for 10 years after that. We also have home ownership loans. That provides a 5 to 10% down payment assistance for low to moderate income applicants to purchase a home located in Huron County. Since 2007, we've been able to assist 70 households in purchasing their first home. We also run a community homelessness prevention initiative, and this helps with homelessness in the county. And some of the things we do under that current program is a Huron Out of the Cold shelter that is run in Godrich. It will be opening up here soon in the middle of November, and that's an overnight shelter. We have addiction supportive housing, so that's a collaboration with Choices for Change in the county, and it offers supportive housing to those recovering from addictions. We have a housing outreach worker. We also offer transitional housing. It's called Huron Turning Point, and that is in Exeter. And it offers transitional housing for men in the county, and there's 3 units in that. We also have a peer support program, which is done in collaboration with CMHA Middlesex. Pathways to Self-Sufficiencies is a funding program which helps people with rental arrears and utility arrears to prevent them from becoming evicted or having their utilities shut off. We also have partnerships with both the Godrich and Wingham Salvation Army. We have a youth homelessness prevention program that's run through Ontario Works called Yes I Can. And we also have a partnership with Safe Homes for Youth in the county. So that's all funded through our Chippy homelessness program. Just to give you some statistics that we currently have in Huron County, there's currently 394 on the centralized wait list. And I looked up specific to the Wingham area. So we currently have 12 persons on our wait list for our seniors only building at 45 Alfred Street in Wingham. We have 10 persons on the 2-bedroom wait list, 8 on a 3-bedroom wait list, and 37 people are waiting on our 1-bedroom wait list at this time for housing in the Wingham community. We housed 55 applicants housed from our wait list in 2018. And to look overall on who's on our wait list, 23% of them are seniors, 20% are families, and 57% of them are single adults or couples. The average wait time in the county is 1 to 5 years, Godrich being our longest wait list for about 5 years. Wingham, there hasn't been much turnover, but it's probably more on the 1 to 2 years for to get into housing in the Wingham area. Average monthly tenant incomes, just as so you get a sense. Seniors, their average income is around $17,907. Families, $18,498. And single adults and couples, their average income is $12,483 a year. So we're dealing with very low incomes in the housing. What's new? This past spring, the province announced funding for Canada-Ontario Community Housing Initiative, which we call COCHI, and Ontario Priorities Housing Initiative called OFI. COCHI funding provides an opportunity for service managers and providers to address the challenges associated with projects reaching end of operating agreements. So those would be the nonprofits. So So right now, there's funding that's given to them as part of the operating agreement, but when that ends, they will no longer get funding. So this allows some funding opportunities for them to make their housing sustainable. It was just a small portion we received, but we'll be able to help one housing provider. OPI, it's modeled similar to some of the other projects that we talked, the affordable housing programs. So that included housing allowances, home ownership, Ontario Renovates. It also has allowed us, through this funding, to do support services component. So we're hoping to use some of that money to assist with some support services so we can help people stay housed rather than losing their housing, because that's so important at this point. An investment plan for the county's allocation was approved at County Council, and there's actually some funding that we're looking in there as well to go towards a rental build. Not a full rental build, but there's some money there that we're hoping to collaborate with somebody for. So that's kind of covers overall what we look after in the county as far as our housing programs. So I'm not sure if that's the information you were looking for, if there's anything further that we can answer for you.
Thank you very much. We're gonna throw it open to the councilors. Would anybody like to comment or question, concerns, thoughts? Go ahead, Anita.
I would like to know, like, Light and Belgrave, do they have any housing too, or is it just, are you just focusing more on Wingham? Or
Yep.
is there a reason why?
We
they're not?
do, sorry, I was thinking I was in Wingham, that's my fault.
are
We
in
do
Wingham.
have, we do have housing in Blythe. We have an apartment building on Queen Street, it has 19 units in it.
Okay.
Belgrave, we do not have any housing in Belgrave.
Is there a reason for it, that there's nothing in Belgrave, is it because there's no grocery store or anything like that?
I don't think that's because we do have housing in other areas where there isn't those services either. This was the housing that was owned by the province of Ontario that was downloaded in 2001. So it was whatever was built at the time was then downloaded to the county.
Okay, and the grant you were talking about, that is available for all municipalities, maybe, if they want to build, or is it not for municipalities, or is it for private investors or
So
builders?
at this time, we just received, we put in the investment plan, it needs to be approved by the ministry, and after it's approved, we have a small amount of funding. And then there'll probably be a request for proposal put out, I'm guessing, Barb,
Yeah,
for.
so we're very much in the exploratory stages for the rental build funding that we have allocated. So we're just looking to explore, would that be private endeavor through the municipality, would it be a partnership with public-private, is it a partnership with a volunteer? So we're very much in the exploratory and just sort of getting some ideas about what would be the best fit and also an appropriate location as well. So we have no predetermined ideas at this stage. We'll know we'll have to start moving on this in the very near future. This is a requirement to have it committed by the end of 2020. So time goes fast. So we know we'd like to start moving on this and start looking further at it come November and getting some ideas about is it an endeavor that we do as a county, or would we try and partner with another volunteer or with a private or another nonprofit agency, for example. So very much in the exploratory.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, through you, Reeve. Yeah, I'm just curious, don't take this wrong or anything like that. How do you move ahead? You know, I can see that you're doing good for these people, definitely. But you obviously have goals, there's a waiting list. What would be your next step? Like if, as an example, if a municipality is wanting to go ahead with a development of some sort, or a small or large, doesn't matter. Is there, I don't want to say pressure, but I can't think of any other word, from the county to make a percentage of that development suitable for low housing? Or, like, I'm curious.
Okay, so I think there's a couple of
Yes.
questions in there. In terms of a private bill that wasn't attached to the funding, that would be through planning department. And Monica, I don't put you on the spot or anything, but I know that there's a goal of working towards affordable, but but again, that's in the private sector. If there were attachments to this particular pot of funding, so the rental build, there would absolutely be funding requirements in there in terms of affordability. It's an 80% of the average market rent for the area. So there are funding parameters, and there's also eligibility requirements if an affordable build was utilizing funding. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, then you're committed if you're gonna utilize any of the funding,
Yes,
right?
if the funding is
Makes
used,
sense.
absolutely you have to be 80% of average market rent,
Makes
right? And there's certain other eligibility criteria as well in terms of the proponent putting up a certain percentage and having an equity base in it as well. And I think the other part of your question that I heard was, how do we go about determining this? So Chris touched on it briefly a moment ago in terms of whenever we've had funding before that we're going out, if it's not an internal build, then we go out into the community to look for partners, we put out a request proposal, and we do a competitive procurement. And then it's a matter of, well, it's either an RFP or an expression of interest, either or. That's how we've done it, for example, the 12 units that are being built in Goderich on Strang Court. We put out an RFP maybe a year and a half or something like maybe 2 years ago, and put that out for private proponents or nonprofit agencies to bid on, saying, here's our plan, here's what we would do, here's what we would bring to the table. So we do this competitive process.
So it's up to the developer, builder, if they so choose to access that funding, then they put an RFP in. If not, they just go ahead whatever way they want to go, zoning wise, right?
If they wanted to access the affordable money, then they would bid on the
They come to
RFP,
you, yeah.
if that's the route that we chose to go in terms of doing a competitive RFP.
Yeah, all right.
Other questions or comments? So, Barb, if you don't mind, I'm gonna say a few things. Here in North Huron, we're building on the Hutton Heights project that we, could be the end of next year, probably in the spring of the following year. And as you said, we have quite a list of waiting people. So we would be interested in talking to you about that as we develop Hutton Heights, and we're not sure which direction we're going with that. Having said that, I planned on pulling a meeting with all the local contractors to see if they want to get involved in that project and to what degree if they do want to get involved. And at the same time, we'd like to be able to put out that information that you gave us here tonight, saying that if you wanted to build affordable housing or accessible housing in Hutton Heights, this program may be available. As you said, you've got a small amount of people you can, or small amount of money for a small amount of time.
So when you say this program is available, are you referring to the rental build?
Yes.
Okay, so that's, until we put out an RFP or determine what direction that we're going to, I wouldn't say it's on the table yet.
Okay. So I'll put that a different way. Could we be notified at the town hall when that happens so that we can reach out to the contractors in our area?
Yeah, if it is a competitive RFP that we go through that route, we would put it out, and anyone who said, you know what, please keep me on your mailing list for email distribution, we would absolutely do that.
Yeah, that would be great so that we can help the local contractors. Maybe a lot of them don't understand. I didn't know anything about it either until I became the REIT. But I think there's some certain contractors in our area that would be interested and could help out our community by getting involved in this. And we may even have some sites in the lot and they don't know yet. Okay?
Yep, happy to do that, and we can also explain more about the particular program as well. The RFP, EOI, whichever direction you go, would stipulate what the program is all about, so there'd be a lot of explanatory information in there as well, in
Great.
terms of how the program is structured, how the funding is structured. It would all be laid out in the RFP. It would even be sort of what types of units that we found the greatest need for. Typically they're one bedrooms, but there's always sometimes a need for family units as well. So even that, we haven't predetermined that.
Yeah.
Again, in the early stages. So again, the RFP or EOI is not out there yet. We're still very much exploring how do we disperse this money.
Thank you very much. Trevor?
But in saying that, our county council will then make the ultimate decision on how which way you would recommend a certain way, and county council would then determine if that's the approach that they want to take. Is that correct?
investment plan that's being approved by council, we have it in for rental build. It may be discretionary as an operating procedure, which direction that we choose based on the need. So it may be an operating component in terms of, we have pre-approval to do a rental build. I would more than likely take it back to council to say, this is the direction that we've chosen. But again, that's still in the early stages as well. We're very, very beginning at this in terms of.
But then from a standpoint of the committed, this funding is you indicated that it needs to be committed by December of 2020. What is labeled as commitment? Do you need a signed
Yes,
proposal by some developer or the county that's saying we are going to build this?
a signed contribution agreement. So we've got 14 months for that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Well, seeing none, I want to thank you ladies for coming out and sharing this with us tonight. Again, it's going to help us as we move forward with the ideas that we have at this council and the direction we're going with this council. And as you know, Barb, I'll keep in contact with you and we'll make sure that we can see if we can work something out.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
I just back up to the council and let them know that I apologize, I forgot to let you know that Kevin couldn't make it tonight. He has previous engagements. So Kevin Faulkner will be with us tonight. 6.2 public meeting, the housekeeping amendment to the North Huron zoning bylaw. 6.2.1, purpose of the meeting. The purpose of the public meeting is for the council township of North Huron to consult with the public on the housekeeping amendments to North Huron zoning bylaw. 6.2.2, requirements for the public meeting. This public meeting is required to be held pursuant to the Planning Act RSO 1990 as amended, which requires that council shall hold at least one public meeting and that all property owners within 120 meters or 100 feet of the area affected shall be given notice of the meeting by the clerk of the municipality. Pursuant to the Planning Act RSO 1990 as amended, council shall forward to such boards, commissions, authorities, and other agencies as council considers may have an interest in the proposal sufficient information to enable them to understand it generally. Purpose of the zoning amendment. Laura, it's your turn.
Good evening, Council. So this is the public meeting for the housekeeping zoning amendment for the North Huron zoning bylaw. And housekeeping amendments are undertaken from time to time to municipal zoning bylaws to ensure that they're consistent with other bylaws that exist within the municipality, new provincial policies, and as well to fix any errors or confusion and provide clarification on items throughout the zoning bylaw through minor updates. So this zoning bylaw was directed, this housekeeping amendment was directed by council to be undertaken by myself to provide some minor clarifications and changes throughout the text of the zoning bylaw. There are no proposed changes to any specific property as a result of this zoning amendment, and there are no changes to any of the mapping of the zoning bylaw as well. It's just strictly text that's being proposed to be edited. So getting right into the proposed changes. So these are also described throughout the bylaw that's for council's consideration tonight, bylaw 98-2019. And throughout the zoning bylaw, it's proposed that there are new definitions to be added in section 2. So that's the section where there's definitions of the permitted uses, types of structures that are permitted throughout the zoning bylaw, or various terminology. So some of the new definitions that are to be added already exist in the zoning bylaw, but they exist as a term or permitted use, and there's no definition to clarify what that actually means when you're interpreting what is permitted. So specifically, community center and a dairy are two that are found listed as a permitted use and now have a definition to clarify what's included. And some of the new definitions that are recommended to be added are brewery, distillery, winery, which is included as the manufacturing of alcohol, as well as microbrewery, distillery, winery. So you'll notice throughout the revised and new definitions, brewery, distillery, winery are kept together as 3 uses in the same definition, and that they're kept together so that basically the manufacturing of alcohol is applicable to any of the uses. So the difference between microbrewery, distillery, winery is that it also includes retail space and tasting rooms as well. So it's recommended to be located in a commercial zone. Cannabis and cannabis protection facility are new uses that are proposed, are new definitions that are being proposed to be added, and that would be from the Norfolk County bylaw, and that's also to update the bylaw, the zoning bylaw, with terminology used by the industry and by the provincial government and Health Canada as well. And hospice is also a new definition to be added, also recommended to be a new permitted use throughout several zones in the zoning bylaw. Some of the existing definitions in section 2 are recommended to be revised, and that's to add a wider range of permitted uses in that definition, or to clarify what is permitted in that use. So this would include a restaurant, retail store, place of entertainment, industrial uses, light and general, and multiple attached dwelling and top of bank. So these are all having minor revisions to clarify them or what's permitted. For example, multiple attached dwelling was to clarify how it's more of a townhouse. Before it could have been interpreted either as a triplex or quadplex, which are different structures. Top of bank was to provide more clarification on how to interpret that when determining where the top of bank on a property lies and determining the setback for someone to construct a building. Home industry was revised to add the proposed use of brewery, distillery, winery, and also to provide a limitation on retail space. Currently, the home industry definition is silent on retail, and by adding a limited amount of retail to a home industry, which would also include small-scale home manufacturing, welding shop, small electrician shop, woodworking, etc. This allows it to not exceed beyond what's considered an appropriate scale for an at-home business, and if it were wanting to expand and become a full-fledged business, then it would go through the appropriate zoning measures and see if it needs to be rezoned to an AG3 or another appropriate zone, and look at site compatibility with the neighbors, access, and other site factors. And then rural winery and farm winery were both proposed to be changed to add that brewery distillery component as well. And the distinction between those two are based on the amount of sale space that's allowed in each use and the amount that of land is being used to grow the crops to produce those types of alcohol as well. So then also there's the accessory structures section to be proposed to be changed in the general provisions. So accessory structures or uses are a secondary use on the property that's naturally secondary to, or not compared to the main use. And this is providing a clarification on the height, and that it's the definition of the term building height to be used to determine the height of this accessory structure, and to also increase the minimum setback distance from 1 meter to 1.5 meters for an accessory structure from a lot line. And both of these were discussed in collaboration with the chief building official, and recommendations due to miscommunication about this section of the bylaw and interpretation and application as well. So for example, at a 1 meter setback, there is the potential for an eave to be extending too far than what's currently permitted into a setback, and therefore requiring an applicant to come back to me and go through a minor variance. By requiring a 1.5 meter setback, then the eave could encroach as permitted, thus lessening the likelihood of needing a planning application to construct as they want. Parking and entrances. This section in the general provisions is proposed to be amended by deleting conflicting provisions. They conflicted with the North Huron bylaw 53-2016, which regulates entrances to be approved by North Huron and driveways. Sections were conflicting and proposed issue when interpreting the site plan. So it's proposed to be deleted because if it is a North Huron road, the North Huron Public Works is the approval authority for any entrance and driveway. So it would be their interpretation and use of their bylaw versus defaulting to the zoning bylaw. As well, there's the addition of parking space requirements for some of the new proposed uses throughout the zoning amendment. These new uses are that in the C4 zone, a theater is proposed as a new permitted use. And as well, in the C3 highway commercial and C4, the core commercial, we propose to locate a microbrewery, distillery, winery located in commercial areas or adjacent to downtown. And then in the community facility and all 3 residential, low, medium, and high density residential zones would permit a hospice, which would locate in an urban area close to the amenities that are needed for a hospice. As mentioned, Canada's collection facility would replace the wording of medical marijuana facility throughout, but it does not change where it's permitted. So currently, medical marijuana facility is permitted in the AG1 and industrial zone, and that's not proposed to change, just swap the wording for Canada's production facility. And in the commercial zones, clarification that residential units are to be located on the 2nd floor above a commercial use or on the ground floor to the rear. And this has always been the intent of locating a residential unit in a commercial structure. The wording was just clarified as to where a residential unit is intended to be located. And then throughout the zoning bylaw where there's the section listing the permitted accessory structures and buildings, the addition of a reference to the section in the general provisions was provided so that it directs anyone looking through the zoning bylaw to where they can find out where an accessory structure can be with that setback and how high it can be built as well. So that's used to direct people looking back through to the general provisions. As mentioned, farm and rural brewery, distillery, and wineries were amended throughout, and the addition of a farm, brewery, distillery, or winery was added to the AG2 zone. The AG2 zone, as you know, is the remnant farmland that's existing after a house is severed off, and all of the typical AG1 permitted uses are allowed on an AG2, so it made sense as well to permit a farm winery as well. And the minimum square footage per dwelling unit was corrected in a section of the zoning bylaw to clarify that the minimum square footage requirement is per dwelling unit, and that's for interpretation from the building official as well. So throughout the construction of this zoning amendment, the housekeeping zoning amendment bylaw, I worked with Kirk Livingston, the building official, as well as Sean B., the director of public works, and also received assistance from Victor Caluso, one of the Huron County planners, with crafting some of the new definitions and revising the existing definitions so that they were more modern, provided clarity, and were easier to interpret. I did receive one public comment during the circulation of this housekeeping amendment asking if there were any specific zone changes. So for example, was their zoning on their property going to be changed? And I confirmed that no, it was not, because this is not affecting any of the mapping. So this housekeeping amendment conforms with the provincial policy statement and both the Huron County official plan and North Huron official plan. So I am recommending that you pass the resolution under 3417 of the Planning Act, which permits a minor change to the bylaw after the public meeting was held. This is due to the original copy of the bylaw not including that increase in the setback for an accessory structure from 1 meter to 1.5. And I'm also recommending that you approve the housekeeping amendment and bylaw 98/2019.
Okay, thank you, Laura. 6.2.5 doesn't really apply to this because there's no applicant or agent. 6.2.6, comments from others. Not seeing anybody. 6.2.7, council members, questions and or comments. Council, the floor is yours. You don't want the floor. We shall move on. 6.2.8, zoning bylaw procedure following a public meeting. This is a public meeting of council of the Township of North Huron. Thus, a decision of council may or may not be made this evening. If the bylaw is passed by council, the clerk is required to send notice of the passing of the bylaw to all persons and agencies notified of this public meeting. There is a 20-day objection period from the time notice of passing of the bylaw has been mailed by first-class post, wherein submissions, letters, or objection or support in respect to the passing of the bylaw will be received by the clerk. If an objection is received, the appeal is lodged with the local planning appeal tribunal, and at that point the township no longer has any control over the time factor involved. If the council does not pass the bylaw, the applicant may appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal. If the bylaw is passed and no objections are received within the objection period, the clerk certifies that the bylaw is in force and in effect as of the date of the passing, and the notice is forwarded to the Huron County Planning and Development Department. Recommendation from the Huron County Planning Department, Laura, could you repeat that?
So recommending that the resolution for section 3417 of the Planning Act is passed, and that North Huron Council approve the zoning amendment.
Thank you. 6.2.10, a recommendation from council. Council, do we have one? I'm going to read a motion, first motion. If you want to consider it for passing. Resolution regarding further notice pursuant to section 34/17 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990. Whereas council, the corporation of the Township of North Huron has held a public meeting pursuant to section 34-12 and section 39 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw. And whereas certain changes have been made in the proposed bylaw after holding a public meeting, now, therefore, the council of the corporation of the Township of North Huron hereby resolves that pursuant to section 34/17 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, no further notice to be given in respect to the proposal of the bylaw. Do I have a mover? Trevor. Seconder is Chris. Questions or comments? Go ahead, Trevor.
The only question that I had is, based on the procedure, is it still considered the local planning appeal tribunal? I was under the impression that they went back to the Ontario Municipal Board.
So I believe they've kept the name Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, but the process has gone back to be what was under the Ontario Municipal Board.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I call. Everybody in favor? Carries. Second motion that the Council Township of North Huron hereby approve the proposed housekeeping zoning bylaw amendment, and further the council approves an exemption to section 19.1 of the procedural bylaw to allow adopting bylaw number 98-2019 to be passed at the October 21st, 2019 meeting. Do I have a mover? Trev, Rick seconds. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the vote. Everybody in favor? Carries. And last is the effect of the public agency comments of direction by council from our chart. Do you have a recommendation on that, Laura?
Well, to summarize, one public comment was received, but did not have any concerns or objections, and staff also had no concerns.
Can I have a mover for that? Do we have to give you the exact numbers, or I think a county, you just do that when we all agree?
Members and others.
So, Reed Bailey, my suggestion would be 4A, and then 3B.
3B.
That would be my suggestion based on there's comments received, but they're addressed through conversation. And 3B is that supportive comments received by agencies, which would be the building official and them, and they're requesting approval.
And you're making that a motion, Trevor?
I am.
Do I have a seconder? I have Paul. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the vote. Everyone in favor? Carries. 6.3, public meeting with the North Huron Community Improvement Plan. 6.3.1, purpose of the meeting. The purpose of this public meeting is for the Council of Township of North Huron to consult with the public on amendments to the North Huron Community Improvement Plan to add and direct grants for structural work program and the property of 446 Josephine Street to the Wingham project area. Should I do something? Okay. I'm gonna read the second one, 6.3.2, requirement for the public meeting. This public meeting is required to be held pursuant to the Planning Act RSO 1990 as amended, which requires that the council shall hold at least one public meeting, that all the property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the area affected shall be given notice in the meeting by the clerk of the municipality. Pursuant to the Planning Act RSO 1990 as amended, council shall forward to such boards, commissions, authorities, and other agencies as council considers may have an interest in the proposal sufficient information to enable them to understand it generally. Laura, 6.3.3, your
Okay.
turn again.
Yes, so for the second public meeting tonight, this is for council's consideration of an amendment to their existing community improvement plan. So a background on the North Huron Community Improvement Plan. Last November 2018, North Huron adopted the existing community improvement plan, which currently has one program under it, the Community Facade Grant Program, which allows exterior renovations for buildings up to a $10,000 maximum. And that was done this past year through 2019 with money that was given by the province to North Huron. And then in June 2019, the North Huron Economic Development Committee received a presentation from the town of Minto about their community improvement grant plan and the existing program under it, and voted to add one of their programs, the structural grant program, to the existing North Huron CIP. So in August, direction was received from council to amend the existing CIP to add this new grant program, and then in September, this public meeting was advertised via the newspaper. So this new amendment would add the direct structural grant as a second program to the existing CIP. So this would allow applicants who are proposing significant structural work on the interior of their building, which is different from the current facade program. And it's hoping to have criteria and address and improve matters such as accessibility, the safety of the building's energy efficiency, and hopefully increasing the mixed use of residential units and make more available, as well as maintaining a vibrant commercial core along the main streets of Wingham and Blythe. And anyone who's proposing those would be eligible for the funding that hopefully would be available for the program. So modeling after the town of Minto's structural grant program is that there's no maximum grant amount, therefore this could be determined by council and basically what is available in the budget for council to issue through the structural grant. A recommendation for a budget request would come from the North Huron Economic Development Committee, and that would be after consultation with the existing business owners and what types of projects are being proposed and could be eligible under the structural grant. Hopefully this would encourage applicants to participate in a competitive process. The town of Minto did cite that they see high quality applications and it becomes competitive since they are able to receive a significant amount of money, and it would transform not just a small portion of the building but throughout, and they're able to do significant interior renovations including adding accessible washrooms, other accessible features, increasing residential units, and the amount of residential units that would be available for rent, and upgrading other facilities throughout the commercial buildings along the main streets as well. So in addition to amending the CIP to add the structural grant program, a second amendment would also to be amend the Wingham project area. So the project area is, there's one in Wingham and one in Blythe, and that's all of the eligible properties that can apply for funding under the CIP program, so both the facade and if the structural grant program is added. So in 2018, it was all of the commercial properties along Josephine Street and Queen Street, but one was overseen and now it's being proposed 446 Josephine Street, so that's the Sepoy building, just beside the Wingham Trail there, is proposed to be added because it does have a commercial zone. So like all other commercial properties, it should be added to be fair. So that's being proposed to be added and amend the CIP project area. Through the process of the amendment, I attended meetings of the North Huron Economic Development Committee and also the the Wingham VIA and discuss the benefits and the intention of the new grant program, as well as and providing clarification on what building renovations were currently permitted under the existing CIP program. As when I visited the meetings, we're still in an intake period, the third intake for the CIP. There was still some provincial funds left to be granted. Accessibility was cited as a big concern and something that business owners were particularly interested in, and to be able to have funds to assist them in improving the building's accessibility. And to address this, there were further edits made to the North Huron CIP criteria for the facade program that stressed that improvements or the addition of accessible features were also an eligible project that they could receive funding for. I did receive one comment during the circulation of the CIP, and that was from an owner and operator of a business in Belgrade. And they wanted to state that if North Huron does have a functioning community improvement plan, they wish that businesses in Belgrade should also be given the same opportunity to participate and receive funding for building upgrades. And that they would like council to please consider that for future amendments to the CIP or additions of programs. So since this will add a second program with the opportunity to provide significant beneficial changes to not just the exteriors to buildings, but the interior as well, and to both of the commercial streets, and it was met with high anticipation from business owners and members of the North Huron Economic Development Committee. I'm recommending that the amendment be approved and that North Huron Council pass both of the bylaws for the amendment tonight.
Thank you, Laura. 6.3.4, comments from the applicant and or an agent. Did anybody want to speak to this? Seeing none, we'll move on to 6.3.5, comments from others. Would anybody in the audience like to speak to this? Quiet crowd tonight, good. 6.3.6, council members, questions or comments? Go ahead, Chris.
Just looking at the map of Wingham, it should be revised to the new development just west of Kerr Drive and Emberley.
Okay.
You know, it's the same as on the other side of Josephine and Emberley, so, you know, it's the new one? Gas
Yes,
station, or little store, and we
Yes.
don't know what else?
that's also some highway commercial.
Yeah, but it's not on the map as,
So added as an eligible property.
it's the same as the one on the other side of Josephine, so I would say so.
Okay. So we could amend bylaw 99.
Does everyone know what I'm talking about?
Yes, this one.
You want to save that for another meeting, though? Because we're going to talk about Belgrade too. So I'm going to turn to my clerk and just question whether we should be doing that at another meeting or.
Well, that's up to Laura as the planner, but the one thing that we would need to look into in regard to that property, so right now with the money we're using for the facade grant, so it's part of a Main Street revitalization fund, so I'm not sure if it has to be on Josephine Street to be considered a part of the Main Street.
No, it could be added because it's also commercial. But, and then I guess I'm just wondering if we can pass the bylaw with that amendment to it. Or if we have to come back with the revised bylaw.
The bylaw could be passed at the next meeting with that change.
That's fine.
Or it could be passed, subject to the bylaw being revised, as long as it's revised before the reading the clerk's on.
Okay, so it's
Whatever process.
If you pass it subject to this change, then change will be made and the reading will sign.
So could we have a change made with Belgrave added to?
Yeah,
Is that
all
possible?
ones.
It is a main street.
Okay, and that would be commercial zone properties.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, great.
It's a little store in Belgrade.
So, okay, so we have a motion on the floor, or I'm about to read it, and then clerk's going to add in. So we're, we have a motion.
You just amend this motion to
Okay.
bylaw subject to the change.
Could I get a clarification if you would also include the commercial building on Belgers Road, the former school?
Oh, the European appliance place.
Yes. That is the other commercial property.
Yes, so
I think those are the only two there.
You've got the old clock place out there. That's right, you've got the, so I would just go with
But they're on the
commercial.
other side of the road.
Yes. So I
It's
would go,
Morris.
That's Morrison.
oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay, so I hope he wasn't the one that asked us then. Sorry about that. So it's only on the west side.
Yes, the Euro parts or, yes,
I think so.
So
commercial in
So-
North Huron.
in both in Blythe and in Wingham, all commercial located buildings within, in there, have they been zoned in order to be granted this money? Is I guess the question, because again, what we're saying is those are not on a main corridor. Like, Euro Parts is not on the main corridor, right? It's not on the main corridor of what you would consider the downtown of Belgrade.
It's Kennedy Road.
So
I know what you're
let's
saying.
let Laura answer that one.
Well, I guess my question is that if we're doing, are we being equal or equitable from both those wards if we indicate that? Is somebody in Blythe or Wingham, if we added Euro Parts, is another business gonna come and say, well, why aren't I on it? I fit the same threshold as Euro Parts. That's my question. I don't, I'm trying to think of a building, the only one that I'm thinking of is Foxton's.
I think Fox.
It's out there.
Included.
So that's the only one I can think of, is that not on the specific, on the specific role, like that
On the main
corridor
street.
that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like there's Biax and all of them, are they included?
They weren't because they're industrial.
Industrial.
So anything from Beeline to Amberley Road that has frontage onto Josephine Street was considered in Wingham, and then same from along Queen Street in Blythe. So it'd be frontage along, but that was also under because of the main streets revitalization. So if this is going forward, Wayne, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure if we have to still include just main streets for the main streets revitalization, or because we've received and used the funding for that.
Well, just in terms of the CIP funding, and it's later in our council package, that the money from the Main Street Revitalization Program will pretty well be spent if council approves the recommendation tonight. So, you know, in terms of,
Future.
yeah, so in terms of, you can amend the CIP to include that. But in terms of I think there's about a little under $1,000 left of the Main Street Revitalization funding. I would suggest we want to ensure that it's applied toward a project specific to the Main Street. But the CIP lives beyond the Main Street Revitalization Fund. So if it's council's wish to amend the CIP to include that, you can certainly do that. But in terms of the 2020 budget process, you need to look at then how much you want to allocate to that program in 2020 and beyond. So it'll be your taxpayer money that you will be using to fund that program on a go-forward basis.
So as far as the authority to add properties to a CIP project area, the Planning Act states that council may determine all or a part of the municipality. Not that it has to be what's identified as a main commercial corridor. That came from the direction from the fact that they are main streets and the Main Street Revitalization Fund.
So if I'm hearing my council properly, you would like to add the main street on the west side of Belgrade and the Euro Parts bill. And I hear some head shaking, fine.
I have no issue. I just want to ensure that we're being fair and equitable to all commercial buildings in the municipality if we're giving certain criteria to certain other ones, that making sure that we're consistent in how we approach that to both Blythe and Wingham and Belleville, and the people above it. If it's all even, then I'm okay with it. I just want to make sure that at the end of the day,
Understand.
after we look at this and agree to that, that we go back and look at these
Yep.
these plans to make sure that we're being equitable and fair to all the commercial buildings in the municipality.
Yeah, and I think the Economic Development Committee will probably follow up on that and have a good look at that and make sure that we've done this properly, but, so we're gonna move that motion forward. Yes, we're good, the clerk's gonna read the,
I
motion.
have a question, yeah?
Yes, sorry.
Question, please.
Sorry.
Did I, through you, Reeve, did I understand that there's no maximum? What was that? What was that point? No maximum to the grant, or
To the structural grant. So
Oh.
right now, under the
the
facade one.
maximum?
Yeah, so
I
the,
gotcha.
yeah, so that would be at either the recommendation from the Economic Development Committee to council, or council's approval as to what amount they can give.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but it won't be legislatively in the CIP.
So that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby approves the amendment to the North Huron Community Improvement Plan to add the direct grant for structural work program and the property of 446 Josephine Street to the Wigton project area, and further that the community improvement plan be amended to include the 82 Kerr Drive development and any commercial business on the main street in Belgrave and the Euro Parks building, and further that council approves an exemption to section 19.1 of the procedural bylaw to allow bylaw 99, 2019 and bylaw 100, 2019 to be passed at the October 21st meeting, subject to the required changes.
Do I have a mover? I have Christopher, and I have Anita. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. 6.3.7, this is a public meeting of the Council Township of North Huron, thus a decision of council may or not be made this evening. If the bylaw is passed by council, the clerk is required to send notice to the passing of the bylaws to all persons and agencies notified in the public meeting. There's a 20-day objection period from the time notices of passing of the bylaw has been mailed by first-class post, whereas the submission letters and objections or support in respect for the passing of the bylaw will be received by the clerk. If an objection is received, the appeal is lodged with the local planning appeal tribunal, and that point the township no longer has any control over the time factor involved. If council does not pass the bylaw, the applicant may appeal to a local planning appeal tribunal. If the bylaw is passed and no objections are received within the objection period, the clerk certifies that the bylaw is in its force and in effect as of the date of the passing of the notice, is forwarded to the Huron County Planning and Development Department.
So now you just pass the motion to approve it, so now you just need a recommendation from the chart effects of the public agency comments.
So we're gonna go to the chart again. We've already done that.
So yes, so based on comments received, there was changes to the recommended motion, and there were no other outstanding concerns, and staff was supportive.
Anybody got,
Basically say it's the exact same, 4A as well as 3B. So 4A, the concerns that were raised through public consultation have been addressed by our change in our motion. And the support of, or the agency comments were all received and basically in support of the changes that we had.
thank you. So you're making-
That's what I'm making as a recommended motion.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Anita, questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Passes. Um, 7.1, reports, the clerk's department. Oh, before we go any further, just in
Yes.
case you sneak off on us, everyone, this will be Laura's last meeting with us. She's moving on.
Yes, so I just want to say goodbye and thank you to council and all of North Huron staff. I've been here for 5 years, so it's been great, and I'm now being reassigned to Huron East. So I'm not, it's bittersweet. I really enjoy being here. You guys are a great and easygoing council, and staff has been incredibly supportive and helpful over the years and really fun to work with. So, so thank you all, and I wanted to introduce Monica.
Hello,
She'll be
Monica.
planner. So she also does the planning for Central Huron, and she has many years of experience. So, yeah.
Well, I'd like to start by saying, Laura, thank you very much for 5 years. It's been a delight working with you, and I'm sure I speak for all of my council, and they can speak themselves if they like, but we've totally enjoyed working with you. And I'd like to switch over to Monica and say, well, welcome and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
We are a bit of a fun group.
Yeah, and I just wanted to acknowledge that staff has been very welcoming. I had my first day in the office 2 Mondays ago, and I was here again today, and everybody's really made me feel at home, and I appreciate the warm welcome.
Thank you. Would anybody like to say anything to Laura before we let her go?
I would just say she's probably been the longest standing clerk that we've had, or planner we've had for the past
Yeah.
5 years. We had probably 5 in a couple of years, so,
Yeah.
so, congratulations, and good luck moving forward.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Take care.
Okay. Reports, Clerk's Department. Community Improvement Plan Intake 3 applications. So I'm going to read the, do you want to speak first?
Thank you, Your Worship. So, at the June 17th council meeting, council passed a motion to approve a third intake of applications with the deadline being September 30th. And this third intake was advertised again by North Huron staff, and then the Economic Development Committee went door to door to businesses in both the Wingham and Blythe project areas to inform them of the program. And at the end of the third intake period, a total of 3 applications were received, and all 3 applications met the grant eligibility criteria. All 3 applications were reviewed at the October 10th Economic Development Committee meeting. So while a quorum of members was not present at that meeting, the committee members that were in attendance were in support of the recommendation for council to approve all 3 applications. So the piece I'm just going to touch on from the report is the financial impact piece, and we've touched on it a little bit already, but so if all 3 applications are approved, the total amount of allocated funds required for intake 3 would be $21,736.15. And so in 2018, $42,008 of grant money was received for the Downtown Main Street Revitalization Fund. And after the first 2 intakes, only $22,516.23 was remaining. So if council approves all 3 of these applications, a total of $780.08 of the Downtown Main Street Revitalization Funds would remain after the third intake period. So at this time, staff is not recommending a 4th intake, but instead, in December of 2019, what is recommended is that the Clerk's Department would reach out to the approved projects who were approved during the first, second, and third intakes to see whether they're still going ahead with their project or not. And if they're not, then those funds could be reallocated during the 4th intake period, beginning January to the end of February. That way we can ensure we meet the March 2020 deadline to have all those funds allocated, and that way there would be more funds other than the $780 that is just remaining right now.
So I'm going to read the motion, 7.1.1, that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receive the report from the clerk dated October 21st, 2019 regarding the Community Improvement Plan Intake 3 applications. And further, that the Council receive 3 applications and approve 3 to receive the Community Improvement Plan grant funding to the purpose of faucet improvements under the terms of the program. Do I have a mover? I have Anita and I have Rick seconding. Questions or comments? I don't see any, so all in favor? Carries. Thank you very much. We're going to move now to 7.1.2, and I'll maybe have Trevor talk to this first again before we ask for a motion.
Yes, thank you, Reed. So I just wanted to touch base with the council here. So what has happened, this is in regards to the Wingham Police Officers Pension Transfer Shortfall. So, as part of the collective agreement with the North Huron Police Services Board, the Wingham Police Officers Association had a clause in their agreement that if the Wingham Police Service was disbanded, that they would, if there was a shortfall when they transferred to the OPP and under the Ontario Pension Board, or board, I believe is what their term is now, that the municipality and the North Huron Police Services Board would cover that shortfall to ensure that at the time of their transition, they are not worse off than as if they were left as a Wingham police officer because of their pension. So when this was, so after the disbandment, obviously there has been some time that's gone from February to now in October. We didn't know anything as it relates to the shortfall until they had a meeting with their pension, and we have two officers who've now shown evidence to us via the OPD and an actuarial that there's a shortfall in their pension. So the North Huron Police Services Board went through the due diligence in order to get a legal opinion to ensure that we've provided that we're eligible or we're required to make the payment to them, and that we're okay to make the payment to them directly versus having made payment directly to the pension, because that's normally how we would have done it. We would normally make it directly to the pension. However, the Ontario Pension Board doesn't allow that, does not allow that to be done. So we need to make the pension payment directly to the employee, which then has to make the payment by November the 8th to their pension for the shortfall. So as all this was going on, there, like I said, there was two officers that had come forward with their shortfall. We have confirmed that all the other officers have no shortfall from their relates to their pension. So we have, the motion is to, in order to allow this payment to be processed, in order to satisfy the collective agreement that the North Huron Police Services Board has agreed to with the association. But in the meantime, get that payment to them in due time without having to worry about the payment having to be to them by November the 8th. November the 8th is when the employee has to pay that top-up. If they do not, they lose it. So that's the kind of the threshold in saying that. So as we've been working through this, as we've been working through the due diligence as it relates to these payments, the board has asked that full and final releases be approved, be signed off by the officers. As there hasn't been a shortfall for the other officers, it wasn't suggested that those officers be sent a full and final release, because there's really nothing more than we've paid them other than the final agreement when we transferred them on their disbandment, meaning their termination and their severance pay. In future, after going back and getting back some information, it has come to the attention that we probably need to look at it as a whole association and not individual employees, because the actually association is who is actually negotiating the terms of the collective agreement with the officers, not the officers individually. So basically, at the host of this, we're asking, the North Huron Police Services Board is recommending to the council that the payments of the two officers' top-up be paid in that course. And then basically what they're asking, the North Huron Police Services Board had recommended that a full and final release be signed off to cover off the municipality as well as the North Huron Police Services Board. But in the discussion that we had today, it seems that it's more appropriate to ask the association to sign off on the collective agreement that we've accepted, or we've provided all the things that they've requested based on the agreement, that they sign off on that, and then once they sign off on that, then we're covered as a municipality and a North Huron Police Services Board as it relates to any future potential issues as it relates to these officers. That was a long-winded discussion, or a long-winded conversation about what's been going on over the past month, in order to make sure that we've dotted our i's and crossed our t's and did all the things that we need to. Is there any questions from council as it relates to this specific payment?
I'm gonna read the motion, I want a first and seconder, and then we'll have the questions, okay? Oh, sorry, Trevor, you want to amend the motion?
Yeah, the motion that I would just want to, part of the amend is that the police, the Wingham Police Association, is to sign the full and final release, not the officers. So we're just gonna ask the Wingham Police Association, which had at the time, had a president and a vice president. They have the authority under their association to sign off on that. Then that's what we're asking them to sign off, that we've done everything as it relates to the agreement, and they're happy that with what we've completed as a full and final package based on disbandment.
I'll try to stick that in. Yeah, okay, Carson's gonna read it to make the proper changes.
So that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the clerk dated October 21st, 2019 regarding the former Wingham Police Service Officer's pension transfer shortfall for information purposes, and further that council authorizes staff to issue a total payment of $51,220 plus CPP and EI deductions to the officers impacted by the pension shortfall upon receipt of the signed T1213 form, and further that council authorizes the total amount of the pension shortfall to be paid from the Westerio dividend received in 2019, and further that the Director of Finance be authorized to make the necessary changes to the budget, and further that council direct staff to ask the Wingham Police Association to sign a full and final release and indemnification form.
Do I have a mover? I have Trevor, I have Paul seconding. Questions or comments? Go ahead, Chris.
The Wingham Police, well, I'm very shocked by this. I realize that it's something we have to do, but, you know, when you're not expected, like back in the spring when we were discussing this, I asked, is that it? And I was feeling that that was it, and I'm sure you did too, but I'm just trying to show my disgust over this. But anyways, the Wingham Police Association, how long is that in effect? Like, can they sign off? Are they legally still an association at this point?
So we consider them to be an association until we fully approve if they're discussing anything to do with the collective agreement, the collective agreement was good until disbandment. So if they're talking about anything that relates to the agreement, that association is still full in effect. We have to treat it that way, because if there's a grievance or an issue, then that's the issue, that's the process that we have to follow. So the following is, even though they're disbanded, the Wingham Police Force is disbanded, we would still consider them an association under that agreement, because they have a collective agreement with us during that period. To answer your question, are they an association right now? Well, no, they're under the OPP umbrella. But any issue that they have with the North Huron Police Services Board, we dealt with the association. We didn't deal with individual employees. We dealt with the association and the association only.
Okay, I get that, but we're dealing with, hate to say it, but a phantom organization at this point. Truly, it is. And, you know, for them to sign off, I hope this is the end. I really do, and I'm sure we all do, because we don't need this again. But I have a hard time seeing them as a legit association. Sorry.
I'll step in there and say that the association and the police board have worked very hard on this to bring this to a final end. It's been stressful for everyone. Trevor, unless you want to add to it, it's just.
The only thing I want to add is that when this new council was brought in, and we talked about the disbandment, we talked about the additional costs. This council should not be surprised, because I made it very clear that there was still part of the pension that we had to deal with that we couldn't know that, what that was gonna be like until they went through their transition pension stuff with the OPP. We couldn't force that, we don't know how, that, we were just made sure that when we got the information from them, we've done our vetting by going through legal and making sure that we're not wasting more time and money on ensuring that this payment is of validity. We believe that the North Huron Police Services Board believes that they are an association, and they will be until we are left that says we've satisfied our agreement. And once they've satisfied our agreement, we will then take that as ownership and say, okay, now we believe you are no longer an association, because if you've signed off on the collective agreement that we've met our due diligence and our facts, then there should be no reason why you need to come back to the North Huron Police Services Board or the municipality. That's the position, that's my opinion. That has not been talked about at the Police Services Board. But when we talk about these officers, we talk about them as individuals, but we talk about them as an individual collective when you look at the agreement, because the agreement talks about all of them as one group. It's no different than a union contract, it's the same discussion. So, yeah, one person, this happens to be two individuals, but we deal with it through the collective agreement, because that's the only language that we have. If we didn't have the collective agreement, we would have Employment Standards Act the same as every other employee. But we don't have that because we have a collective agreement.
Did our lawyer look at it, just to
Yes, we did.
verify?
We had verification from legal as it relates to, yes, we've got a number that makes sense, and we did not go through another actuarial, because our legal said, you've got an actuarial, they did it, you're gonna ask for the same information. So we've done our due diligence that the North Huron Police Services Board believes that we are doing what we need to do based on our collective agreement to accept the fact that this is a payment that I don't think everybody would like to pay, but it's a fact. It's a fact of the collective agreement, and that part of the agreement has been in the agreement for many, many years. Many, many years, long before I was even in the last 5 years when I've been on the Police Services Board. That clause has been there for quite some time. So we weren't gonna get that out of there in any way, shape, or form. Because the intent of that clause was make sure those employees were fair and left, that they didn't lose anything because they were told they were needed. We didn't want the police service, the Wayne Police Service anymore.
At the end of the day, Chris, we owe it to them. Any other questions or comments? What, John?
Reeve, I just want to make sure to mention, just in case nobody didn't understand what the signed T1213 was. So that form is an authorization for staff to not deduct income tax off of their check. So we're giving them a money that's not paid with income tax. Generally, if you pay any money to an employee, you are required by federal laws to deduct source deductions. That form needs to be signed by the employee and sent off to the CRA for approval. We are doing it on suggestion from our auditor that you're not gonna get an issue with it. So we've done it this way so to make it so that one, the employees can get their money before November the 8th, and we can do our due diligence so that we're not paying more tax money than we necessarily need to.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the vote. Carries. What is next? 7.2.1. I'm going to read the motion first, Ron, and then I'll get you to explain it. That the Council Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the Director of Finances dated September 16, 2019 regarding tax refunding under the section 357-1-A of the Municipal Act in the amount of $165.53, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby approves adjustments to the collector's rule as recommended by the Director of Finance in this report dated October 21st, 2019. Can I have a mover? I have Paul. Do I have a seconder? I have Rick. Donna, could you speak to this?
Yes, certainly, Ruth, thank you. So from time to time, we receive applications under section 357 of the Municipal Act, and that allows for tax relief if there's been some sort of a change to the property. So the normal two types of changes either are that the building has been torn down, but in this case, it's a zoning amendment that has caused a change to the property. So this property is located at 237 King Street in Blythe. It's a vacant piece of property, it's the former public school property. And so it was assessed at vacant commercial, and so then under the zoning amendment that was passed by council at a previous meeting, it's now gone to residential vacant, and then of course, at such time when the buildings are put on it, they'll be reassessed. But at this moment, this application is to change and give tax relief for the zoning change from commercial vacant to residential vacant. And it's a small amount of $165.53 that the applicant would get back. So is there any questions on that?
Questions or comments from council? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. 7.3.1, that the township, Vic, I'm gonna read it first, don't mind. That the township of North Huron hereby receives a report from the Director of Recreation Communication Services dated October 21st, 2019 regarding the Canadian Infrastructure Program for information purposes. Do I have a mover? I have Anita and I have Paul seconding. Vicki, would you speak to that?
Thank you, Your Worship. Before you, is an informational report regarding the recent announcement by the federal government regarding the Invest in Canada Infrastructure Program. The government has indicated that the next intake will focus on community, culture, and recreation infrastructure. The program is a cost-sharing program, which entails the government, federal government, and the provincial government, and a third party, which can either be a municipality or a nonprofit organization, sharing the cost of an infrastructure project. So approved projects will receive 40% funding from the federal government, 33.33% funding from the province, and the remainder would be, again, the municipal government or nonprofit association. The deadline for applications is November the 12th. Since funding for recreation infrastructure is not usually something that's available, staff have had discussions that we really do need to, or we really feel that we need to make an application for this program, especially given the aging infrastructure that we have at our recreational facilities. Staff are reviewing the asset management plan, the township asset management plan, capital budget to identify projects that may be eligible for the funding. In addition to that, we're also looking at other projects that would make our application more receptive to receiving the funding. So in the program guidelines, they've indicated accessibility projects that, deal with improving accessibility and energy efficiency and those types of things would be given a priority. So we're looking at, what types of things we could do to address that. Once we've prepared a list of individual projects, we will be bringing forth a report to council on November 4th to ask for permission to proceed. As noted in the report, Blythe Festival is also planning to submit a funding application as well, and they will be seeking township support for their application.
Thank you, Vicki. Questions or comments? Petra?
Does applications within the same municipality, so would Blythe's application impact the potential for other applications? Like, are there only allowed to be one application per municipal group?
Through your worship, no, there can be multiple applications within a municipality. Municipalities themselves can apply for more than one application, but in doing so, we would be competing against ourselves. And in this case, in this instance, we would be competing against the Blythe Festival.
Good, Paul?
Yes, would it help out if you used, through Would it help out if we could say that Central Huron uses our facilities and Morris Turnberry, just curiously?
Through you, your worship, yes, in the guidelines, it does indicate that partnerships are favorable. So what we could do is look for, or request a letter of support or something from one of the Morris Turnberry or Huron East or Central Huron or wherever for support of that. I have been approached by the Knights of Columbus as well. They became aware of this funding and they're looking at partnering with us on it as well. We have gone through at the North Huron West Cast facility, we have gone through an accessibility audit. I'm waiting on that report. I should be receiving it this week, I would think. There are a number of areas up there that have been identified for accessibility issues. And I am aware that the Knights of Columbus Center has some accessibility issues as well that will need to be addressed. The audit for accessibility will be conducted on the Blythe District Community Center on Friday afternoon. So accessibility may be a theme that we really want to tie into some of the other projects that we're bringing forward. But I would certainly think that if we were to get some letters of support from the other municipalities, it would be very helpful, especially since they contribute toward the costs. Morris Turnberry, for instance.
Like I was, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, like Central Huron, we also have some of the children playing ice time down in Blythe and
Maybe something up
Through your reef, Vicki, will you be able to include the Deptron compressor in there? Because without it, we don't have an arena, basically. Certainly helps for the efficiency, and the energy efficiency and what have you.
Through you, your worship, the treasurer and I have been, I guess I can call you treasurer, director of finance and I have been discussing the Dectron because we do have a lot of concerns about it and it is a very expensive piece of equipment to have to replace. And due to, the recent issues we've had with the compressors and things, it's certainly on our radar that, we should probably include that in our application.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. 7.4.1, Sean, if you don't mind, I'm gonna read the motion first. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receive the report from the Director of Public Works dated October 21st, 2019 regarding the proposed building condition assessment of the Wingham Armory building, and further the staff be directed to commission a buildings condition assessment using the service of Capital Management Limited, and further that the council approve the transfer from reserves in the amount of $4,274 to cover costs associated with the Wingham Armory's building conditions assessment. Do I have a mover? I have Chris and I have Paul seconding it. Sean, do you mind?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So last this was presented to council was back in June, at which time staff was instructed to go out, secure pricing, and come back with some more detail. There was a bit of a delay simply because at one point we looked at a number of options, including maybe incorporating more facilities into this process. Through the course of the summer, that was ruled out. So we went back to a very simple procurement process on this one. I approached 3 firms specifically that I had seen output from or had experience in dealing with. There was Capital Management. I dealt with them in a previous life in the same capacity, and for reference, I included a redacted example of the report I got from them for a police station. So that should give, hopefully council had an opportunity to look at that. There's a wealth of information in there. I also contacted McIntosh Perry. Now they did work for the county of Huron a few years back and did an assessment of the Goderich Courthouse. I was able to look at that report and it was very well done. So I had no qualms about contacting them. I thought it would, should they be successful in getting the lowest price, we would still be getting that value that we were looking for. And then of course I contacted Alan Davis. So 2 of the 3 came back with pricing, as you can see in the report. Capital Management came back at 4,200, McIntosh Perry at 6,200, and Alan Avis said regrettably they were unable to do anything with us or for us at the time. They're just too busy, which is, I guess, a good sign in this day and age. So basically, as I mentioned, and as we talked about back in June, the BCA is a very powerful tool. I think when you looked at the council meeting on June 3rd, Councillor Sype had mentioned that there would be benefit if council was going to make a decision on the future of that building to have that BCA in hand as they went through and toured the facility. So for that reason, we're where we are today. And the recommendation, of course, before council is that we would go with the lowest bidder back in capital management. And again, I've had experience dealing with the firm and I'm very, very comfortable recommending.
Thank you, Sean. Questions or comments for Sean? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. 7.4.2, that the Council Township of North Huron hereby receives a report from the Director of Public Works dated October 21st, 2019 regarding an update on the building status and change orders associated with the Blythe Fire Hall and Public Works Garage. Do I have a mover? I have Anita and I have Rick. Okay, seconding, and Sean, you can take this one away too.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so this is simply an update report to council. More specifically, I wanted to take a couple minutes and talk about some of the change orders that have come through. And of course, as everyone I'm sure is aware, these change orders are a very common occurrence through the course of a construction, especially one of this magnitude. I will say though, just to preface, I did have a conversation. We've been, of course, staff, fire chief and myself have been keeping a very close watch on the project, as well as our operations supervisor, Stu. And we've been very happy to date with the way this firm has absolutely attacked the property. I talked to Jake Dawn this morning, asked him whether he was satisfied with the progress. And he said at this point, he's very happy with the progress and believes that the January 31st target is attainable. So that's good news by all means. We certainly haven't seen anything to date to flag us, but like I said, it's been progressing well. But if council would allow, I'd like to quickly go through this change order list. Of course, the generator and switchgear, that was already dealt with in a separate report, and it is not coming out of the contingency fund. It's separately funded. And I do mention in the report that any change of that magnitude would have been brought to council first. You know, basically it's outside of the procurement threshold, and as such we would have talked to you about that first. As we went through the project, the first change order was the addition of showers. When the fire department looked at what was being proposed, they found that it was shy on appropriate shower facilities, so there was an additional 2 showers put in. There was open and available space, so for $19,300, the showers were put in, and that satisfied the needs of the fire crew. These showers are all on the fire side, so they would be used post firefighting exercise for obvious reasons. One thing we noted as we went through the design was there was no eye wash stations on either side. So for $3,300, we requested those to be installed. There's a bunch of conduit needed on the property, specifically conduit to the future build salt and sand shed, which would also house the fueling station for the public works vehicles. 2,700, 2,645 for those conduit, and that includes that's just for the salt and sand shed. There was some upsizing to the mechanical room air conditioning, simply because as they got, once the trade showed up and started looking at what was going to be shoehorned into that mechanical room, it was determined that there was additional cooling required just to keep from getting into problems. It was a very small upgrade, though, I think it was $1,200. Purchase of gear racks, this one's probably one of the most annoying, I suppose, because the original plan was that we would take the gear racks that are at the ESTC and move them. The gear racks at the ESTC, once we actually got into the stage of starting to plan, we found that they're back to back, so there's just a row down the center and the firefighters access both sides. They're not made to be taken apart. So talking to Jake, he has a company that he uses regularly. The installed price he estimated at $15,000. That being said, once the existing racks are not in use, we're proposing putting them for sale on gov deals or maybe through a fire association, but there may be some interest down the road. And they just physically wouldn't fit in the gear room. You could fit the racks, but no gear. No people. No people, sorry, yeah. Tower installation. This was a really frustrating one in the sense that there's a very simple, I think it's approximately 65-foot tower right behind the ESTC, and it's absolutely critical for communication. In talking to the tower service providers, the cost of actually bringing equipment in, disassembling the tower, moving it up the street, warranted replacement. So we're looking at $15,350 for a new tower. We have an ideal location. Again, it'll be a very similar tower, 65 feet. It won't even really be something that anybody sees or notices. And we're expecting actually better reception because of or very good reception because of the elevation of the site. And then the final one was a recent catch, phase converter. The SCBA filling station that's used by the fire department is a 3-phase unit. There's no 3-phase power in the site, so this phase converter simply takes the single-phase power, bumps it up, and creates artificial 3-phase power. The alternative was some fairly extensive modifications to the existing unit, which just make no sense in terms of cost and complexity. So for $2,700, that's taken care of. So as you can see, that brings us to a total remaining of approximately $20,600 in the contingency fund. So to date, I'd love to say that I'm not anticipating any more changes, but at this point, they're into the hard wiring, they're into some of the real detailed work now. I think we've captured the brunt of it, but I wouldn't be putting that earmarking that 20K as a contribution reserve or anything at this point. I think it's probably going to be consumed through the process.
Thank you, Sean. Questions or comments, concerns for Sean? Seeing, go ahead, Chris.
Sorry, I feel like a Scrooge. Just born that way, I guess. So you're thinking, Sean, that this is about it, right?
I just tried to
Don't
say.
shake your head.
I'll make no such assertion. I would say that these are the big ones. I mean, we got the tower, we got the conduit, we've got all the big ticket items, and I think at this point, we're at the point now where the trades have moved in. They may encounter the odd thing that needs to be modified, but I would say that when you look at the nature of these changes, it's kind of shows an evolution, and I think we've captured the majority of them, but I don't be surprised if I bring another update report that shows more contingency items. It's hard to say what we're going to encounter.
Sorry, through you. So the builder, his RFP, I guess it would have been, right? So if he encounters more costs, higher costs, it's on him, right? Is that how that works?
Yes, these are change orders, so these are items that were not captured in the RFP.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So if he comes into, finds that the price of lumber changes because of the market, or he just gets into the higher cost than he anticipated, that's on him. But if he found that there was a piece of equipment that was needed or change that wasn't captured in the contract, that's outside of the contract, that will come back as part of the contingency.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Trev.
So these changes have all been initiated by us. Like,
Yes.
it's not been initiated by them, these have been initiated by us. for operational, for whatever. So I would suggest, my opinion is, we might as well just kiss the $20,000 and say it's part of the building. That's, in my opinion, any contingency that they, whether contractors know them or don't, it becomes one of those things where you part of it, it becomes part of a build, and you chalk it up to, you hope you get it right. And I think the questions that I would have is I guess the things I would say is, this has been a very fast turnaround from sale to procurement to build. So what I have suggested, what I would think of is some of these design changes and change orders probably could have been caught if we had a longer time to review, but we didn't. And my thinking is that these are the kind of pressures that when you have, you're gonna have additional costs. So, you know, am I excited about them? Not really, but I think at the end of the day, the fact that we've been collaborating with the department, and at the end of the day, they're gonna have a facility that they can use operationally and that they want. At the end of the day, if they cut the ribbon and they're happy, God bless. Because at the end of the day, it's there for you. It's not for me, I'm not gonna be using it. I'm hoping I don't have to use the fire department. But at the end of the day, it's there for the ratepayers.
Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. I call the question, all in favor? Carries. 7.4.3, this is the one I don't want to read, Sean, sorry, that was an earlier one. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby received the report of the Director of Public Works dated October 21st, 2019 regarding the purchase of a 2014 Caterpillar 816F landfill compactor for information. And further, the council authorized the purchase of one 2014 Caterpillar 816F stock number C5341 in the amount of $387,000 and $500, right? $387,500 plus applicable taxes and Marcel Equipment from Marcel Equipment Limited. And further, the landfill vehicle reserve funds in the amount of $50,000 be applied to the purchase, and further that the $63,900 that was transferred to the reserves as part of the 2019 budget be applied to the purchase price. And further, the total remaining of $285,355 net of HST be borrowed internally from the reserves and amortized over a 10-year period with the annual approximate repayment approximately of $32,500, including principal and interest. Sorry. Sean, would you, first of all, I'm gonna take a mover. Anita, another spin, who's seconds? Paul put his hand up a little bit. Okay, go ahead, Sean.
Thank you, Worship. Admittedly, this is a difficult one. I'll go through it slowly and try to catch all the detail here. So at the last council meeting, staff brought a report forward outlining the engine failure, at which time council directed me to come back with what you have in front of you, which is specifically some details for a replacement compactor. Before diving right into where we landed, I think we tried to look at, as staff, we tried to look at all options. We looked at use of alternative methods for compaction, and there are some small municipalities that are getting some results with a front end loader with quarry tires. I didn't get any real level of evidence to support going down this path, because it is still a very expensive course of action. So basically, we spend a couple of $100,000 and find out that it didn't work as anticipated. So we struggled with this one, but ruled it out because it is again a risk. You're trying to accomplish a task using a piece of equipment that's not made to accomplish that task. The next, of course, we looked at the purchase of a new landfill compactor. I was fortunate enough to find a tender from last year that a county in the area put out. Now, they structured it quite interesting. They asked for BOMAG or CAT. So they had a quote of a BOMAG at $542,000 and a new CAT similar to what we're talking about here at $599,000. So that gives you an idea that in a very competitive procurement process, the price comes down from that full list of 700. Then we looked at the option of a purchase of a refurb unit. There's benefits associated with this option in that any unit is completely inspected, it's tested, and it's warranted prior to purchase. All the fluids are drained and tested, the filters are cut open and tested for metal contamination, which is evidence of internal failures. Engine systems are tuned, injectors are replaced, valves are set on all the machines before they're listed. Now, once the mechanical systems are checked and verified, then the units are sandblasted and painted. And I included a picture of one of these units in the package just so council had an idea of exactly what they look like when they're done going through them. These steps eliminate unknowns and they get rid of the speculation associated with the purchase of such a complex machine. Price for these units were ranging from low 300s for a fairly high hours unit to there was one for $500,000 that I think is listed here that only had 1,600 hours on it. So there's quite a range depending on where your comfort level lands. Excuse me. So, and then the final option we looked at, and I very quickly steered away from it, was purchase of a privately owned unit. As I mentioned earlier, these are complex units. They don't get treated with a whole lot of dignity and respect, and we don't have the mechanical expertise to really go into the detail that would be needed to make this level of a purchase with any confidence. So I steered away from the just bought used from the landfill option. So we went back to Marcel Equipment. That's a firm we've used in the past. They're based out of London, and the only firm that actually that I could find that was actually did this as a business. They referred these heavy equipment units, and there was a tremendous list. So for council, I put together a list of the top 5 that we looked at. As I mentioned last week, and I mentioned it here, we did not look at BOMAGs. They were very close in price, but they're hydrostatic drive. So when they start to fail, it becomes a cascading failure. We went through it in the last couple of years, once bitten, twice shy. So the CAT is a known platform. It's whereas the BOMAG is a German manufacturer. They're running Mercedes systems. Parts are available, but some of the stuff is being spec'd overseas. Whereas CAT it's a Caterpillar, so it's North American made. Units that we looked at, you can see there's a 2014 with very low hours, 1,640 hours. It was $500,000. The unit that we're talking about here is also 2014, has 5,878 hours on it. I included the spec sheet because we thought it was a decent unit at $395. I could buy a 2-year, or we could look at a 2-year older unit with 6,400 hours for 10,000 less. Then you start getting into, you start looking at the 2012 they're showing here for 340,000, has almost 10,000 hours on it. So we're getting back into that purchasing a heavily used machine. And then the 08 was it was a decent price at 350,000, given its hours, but it's still a 2008 unit. So all that to say, we thought that the unit that's being recommended for 2014 with 5,878 hours struck that balance between service time and price. The unit is being offered with an 8-month, 500-hour parts and labor warranty, and that price is delivered to our site They are also willing to give us $7,500 trade-in value for the existing one, including removal. So our cost to actually float that thing would have been a couple of $1,000. It's I don't have the words.
Still,
So when you get into the real painful part here, the financial impact, we're $395,000. We have $113,900 to put down on the unit, which once you work the net HST, that brings us to $285,355.39, including our net HST. In discussion with Donna, we believe that this unit, based on its manufacture, its age, and its hours, we've got a lot of, and the amount that we use it at the landfill, it's got a lot of service life. But we thought it was more responsible on our part to recommend going, I could say, let's amortize this thing over 20 years, but then you get to the end of the 20 years and we're back where we are right now. So the 10-year amortization period should leave us with a unit that has many, many thousands of hours of service time left. It gives the council that day time to start thinking about its replacement. So we're recommending a 10-year amortization, which equates to about a $32,500 per year payment, which would be in lieu of a contribution to reserve that would otherwise be made towards the purchase of the machine anyways.
thank you, Sean. Questions, comments, concerns? Council, go ahead, Paul, and then Trevor.
Is there a possibility that we get a little coverall or something when it's inclement weather? It could be just, our moistures aren't getting on top of it somehow. Some simple building that, just, I think Trevor mentioned it, Councilor Slate mentioned it last time. I think that'd be very beneficial for the machine.
Through your worship, we have already taken care of the power issues so that cold starting will be practiced in the future. I can certainly incorporate a coverall. There's a company in this area that might be able to help us out with that. I can look at it and incorporate that into a 2020 budget.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, Trevor, it's your turn.
Yeah. I look at this as, I want to congratulate Sean on delicately putting how well this is going. The one thing that I look at, what we currently pay today, that I suspected in, is we currently have a $50,000 payment to the hospital that we make over the next 2 years. It's incorporated in our taxes today, right? So it's incorporated in our taxes today. If we don't change that threshold at all over the next number of years, that could help, one, reduce this, as well as put that money, so say that 50,000 stayed in the budget, but it's in change from a donation for the hospital to incorporation of this piece of equipment. You're paying back internal money quicker, but also, or you're putting the money that's additional to that, what Sean is saying, and putting that money into a reserve. So at the end of the day, at the end of the 10 years, you've got $125,000 sitting in reserve for a potential replacement of this particular machine if we're right back into the same place where we are today. So my concern is, I know we're gonna have I don't foresee that $50,000 leaving the budget for reduced taxation or whatever the case may be. I see that $50,000 being just moved from sheer donation to the hospital to capital infrastructure to figuring out what priority we need to deal with. So I guess what I'm saying is we look at, when that comes due, we look at the priority that we think is important and put some of that money in, and then it's transparent to to the ratepayers that know, because the conversation always happens, well, oh, you guys said you're gonna pay $50,000 to the hospital in 5 years, and then, but our taxes didn't change after the 5 years. Well, it's because we have other priorities that we had to continue to keep that $50,000 in the budget. It's just not going to the hospital, it's going to something else. I think we just have to be more transparent as it relates to the budget process and how these kind of so-called one-time items aren't so one-time. They're so one-time based on priority that each council determined at the time.
Right, Chris?
I'm glad you brought that, through you, Reeve. I'm glad you brought that up, Trevor, because that was a good point. Still need, well, we'll be discussing it soon, but it is a way of offsetting some of it anyway. Sean, like I understand, I've handled equipment all my life, so I think you made a good choice from what you had. From your options, it was probably the best thing. And I think in 10 years, you might add another 5,000 hours to it. From what I remember, was it used 7 hours or 10 hours a week type of thing? So, you know, there's 10,000 hours at the end of that day, and it probably still has a bit of life.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, thank you, through you, your worship, that's a very good point. There were a number of 816Fs available that had 15,000, 17,000 hours on it.
Oh, wow.
So, you didn't see them because I wouldn't suppose to put that, but I took some solace in it because it was an indication that that particular design with proper maintenance can run that kind of a time. So, and you're absolutely right, if we, you look at a decade out, we should be sitting at between 10,000 and 11,000 hours.
Anita?
Yeah, you might like to think that I money, but
That was
I think this
misspoken
is-
on my behalf, I
okay,
apologize.
oh, all right, yeah, but I think this is money well spent, because as you see what everybody's putting in, how we're paying for this, you see the problems Toronto is having with their garbage right now, and if this piece of equipment helps us make use of our landfill for many years, then I think it's money well spent, because it's a big problem. It's waste is going to be a big problem in the future.
Yeah, and it's not gonna go away.
No.
Sean, is it glow plugs or is it block heater?
I can't answer that, sorry.
That's okay, curious. Is it standard or is it hydro, what do you call hydro drive? What kind of transmission, like automatic or standard?
I believe it's some sort, it's a type of an,
Not standard,
no, it's not standard, it's an automatic over,
whatever, yeah, I know what you're trying to say.
It's gears, not hydrostatic.
that's correct.
That's what
We
it is.
wanted to stay away from the hydrostat, the pure hydrostatic drive, although it is hydraulic control over gear driven.
The only other question I had is, the 10 years, Don, could you quickly figure out what 15 years would be? Would it take the payment down that much, or?
Well, sorry if I may.
Yep.
So the beauty of internal borrowing is all sorts of examples of what Trevor came up with, and how we got some of that money into reserves in the first place was, so say for example, if we have a year where we get a lot more tipping fees for whatever reason than what we anticipate, then we always ask you at year end to put the additional money into reserves, and then we can put that on. But we can set, because it's internal, we can set any payment plan that we want. So, and also say for example, if we ran into a really bad year for something, since we're paying ourselves, we could just not make a payment for ourselves that year. So I mean, I certainly can figure it out for you.
No, it's okay, I heard what you just said, and then we'll just leave it there. No, that's great, thank you very kindly. Any other questions or concerns? Oh, sorry, Sean.
Just to qualify, I pulled the spec sheet up, your worship, and they say it's the CAT power shift transmission, and it does list engine blocking.
It's a block here, so I want to make sure it's plugged in. Okay. Okay, I think I have a mover and a seconder for that. So I'm gonna call the question, all in favor? Carries. Fire department, 7.5.1. Marnie, I'm just gonna read the motion first, let you speak to it then. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby accept the report from the Fire Chief of North Huron regarding the renewal of the ACW fire agreement. And further, that the council approve the method of calculation for the fees of service, which will be the same as Morris Turnberry and Central Huron, updated last year, and authorized to proceed with updating the fire agreement with Morris Turnberry for 4 years. Do I have a mover? I have Rick and I have Trevor. Okay, Marty.
So-
You wanna speak to that?
It's that time of year again when we have to renew the agreement. With the previous two, I guess back when they renewed those, they kind of got off sequence. So we're recommending that we renew this one for 4 years, and then all three of our partner municipalities will be on the same schedule for renewal. We are recommending that it be the exact same agreement as Central Huron and Morris Turnberry. So far, that's working out well. I guess year-end totals will tell us how things are going with that. But I just gave you some rough numbers there based on actuals and what their weighted assessment would be, so it gives you an idea of what they're looking at. I've also listed what they've had for fire calls from January to the end of August, which is a little higher than their average. So based on the new agreement, they would be paying for all the fire call expenses.
Questions or comments from Mark? For Mark, not from Mark. Not seeing any. I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Thank you, Mark. 7.6, Building Department, we have nothing for tonight. 7.7.1, this is the restructuring of the proposal for the Children's Center. And Val, again, I'm going to read the motion, get a mover and seconder, and then I'm going to have you speak to it. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives a report of the manager of the Children's Center dated October 21st, 2019 regarding a restructuring proposal for the children's services. And further, that council approves the attached organizational structure for North Huron Children's Services effective January 1st, 2020. And further, that council authorizes the manager of the Children's Center to develop and present job descriptions for an off-site supervisor position and an assistant supervisor position for council's approval. And further, that the council authorizes the manager of the Children's Center to present a revised manager of Children's Center's job description for council approval. And further, that the council approve the creation of one additional full-time permanent early childhood educator position effective January 1st, 2020. And further, that the council direct staff to prepare an amendment to the fees and charges bylaw to offset some of the increased costs. Do I have a mover? I have Anita. Do I have a seconder? I have Rick. Okay, your turn, Val.
I just made some slides to help us refresh because it was back in June that we had first discussed this as an option. So I just kind of wanted to go over it. So in June, council heard a report requesting consideration to create a new organizational structure for the Children's Services Department. This was in part to prepare for the future retirement of the manager, but more importantly, to address the growth of the Children's Department. Restructuring will also create a more attractive place of employment with more realistic and manageable workloads, room for advancement, and more positions with benefits. This report presents a restructuring proposal for you to consider. It has been developed in consultation with other centers in Bruce County, Huron County, and Perth County, with the ministry advisory personnel from the Ministry of Education and the Children's Services Department of Huron County. So just a history recap, there was a lot of detail there previously, but in childcare in North Huron began in 1972 at the museum building. In 1976, it moved down to the current location, which is across from the splash pad. It was licensed for 32 children, and it had 4 full-time staff and 1 supervisor. As indicated in the original report, there have been no changes in the makeup of the department in 19 years. The number of children currently in care is 10 infants, 25 toddlers, 32 preschoolers, 16 preschoolers at our off-site at Sacred Heart, as well as 13 before and after school spaces at Sacred Heart, and 50 utilized spaces at Maitland River Elementary. So daily in care, we have a current number of 146 children in care on a daily basis. However, when I'm using our system where we set up our children's accounts, because of being a rural area and having numerous part-time children also using our services, currently you have over 300 children who are enrolled in your programs in the Township of North Huron. The staff complement has remained unchanged since 2000, where there was 1 manager and 5 registered early childhood educators for all locations. I would highlight that over those years, I thought I put it on, but I was having troubles with this idea of PowerPoint. So, we did grow from a 32 space center to adding in the toddler spaces, which started out as 10 toddler spaces. Then we added 10 infant spaces. They've also added, since the time they had before, the manager off-site before and after school at both Wingham Public at the time it was, and then now at Sacred Heart School in Wingham. So you have grown a lot. The basics for restructuring in this request to me, just so you can kind of understand the overview before we get into numbers, is to create a new position within the staff called assistant supervisor. 2, to create a second position called an assistant off-site supervisor, and add 1 more permanent full-time registered early childhood educator with benefits to our full-time staff composition. In general, this would distribute the workload more effectively and create a full-time complement, moving us from 6 to 9 full-time staff in total. I did reach out to other centers and looked at their numbers of spaces that they're operating to ask about whether or not they had assistant supervisors or off-site supervisors. Goderich does have an assistant supervisor within their program, however, they have no off-site locations. Clinton Cooperative has both, and they do have several off-site locations. Brockton Municipal Child Care has an assistant supervisor, but they have no or limited off-site locations, so they don't have an off-site supervisor. Birth Care for Kids is in Mitchell. They have a main center. They do not have an assistant supervisor for that main center because it's fairly small, but they do have an off-site supervisor. North Perth Spinright Child and Family Center, so they've done a lot of expansion lately as well. They have a manager and an assistant supervisor, however, they do not have an off-site supervisor. North Huron, we are at the bottom there, and we have a manager, but we have no assistant supervisor and no off-site supervisor. And you can see with the numbers that we do have a significant number of enrollment to deal with. So my vision, and like I'm certainly open to everyone's ideas and thoughts around this table, but this position would likely be filled by an existing staff through internal advertising. They would likely move up a pay band level. They would work part-time with the children as they do now. However, they would have regular office time daily. I was thinking approximately 10 to 20 hours per week. They would help and create the staff weekly scheduling, give tours to the new families, assist with monitoring and communicating with parents on the wait list, which should be a full-time job. Assist with placing children in spaces, assist with performance appraisals and ensuring staff are following policies and procedures, and assisting with performance appraisals. I put that in there a lot because In my department, we have a great number of staff, so we have approximately 25 to 28 people working for us, so that's a lot of people to perform performance appraisals on. Takes a lot of time. The off-site assistant supervisor, the vision I would have was that this person would likely be hired from an existing staff, and they too would likely move up a pay band. They would continue to fill a role in the off-site positions on the floor, but they would also have additional office time. This staff would ensure all appropriate paperwork is completed for all off-site licensing inspections, reviews of our policies and procedures, fire drills, playground safety. They would be responsible for off-site performance appraisals, and they would ensure off-site staff are following the policies and procedures, possibly assist with scheduling of staff and booking families, and they would help assist with family issues and concerns. And I think that would be nice because they're involved in the off-site locations. The proposal also puts forward the addition of one new permanent registered early childhood educator. This person would apply from internal staff currently who have their registered early childhood educator diploma. When they are not considered permanent currently in our system, they are in a lower pay band. So even though they have the same training and background, they are placed in a lower pay band at this time. This would move them into the permanent RCE band, and they would receive benefits and therefore have more stability in their employment. The slide that probably is very interesting to you is, and this is where Dwayne and I initially didn't get a lot of time to discuss the finer details of the report, so then when we got discussing it further and closer, initially it was thought that perhaps the 3 positions would be over and above our current budgets, but really it's going to come from the bottom up, because if you brought in 3 outside people to suddenly be your supervisors for all the people who put in the years below, they would be rather disgruntled, I believe, so I think it would help or be important to start from the bottom and move up. So we're not going to be implementing whole new salaries to this restructuring. What I view is that we have a current staffs in our building who are already at the highest level in their pay bands, which is to be a registered early childhood educator. If they were to bump up a pay band, they would probably be placed in the middle of the next pay band, and their salary increase would actually be very limited. So it looks like about $753.68 is what I calculated. And they already receive benefits because they are on our payroll as a permanent staff, and they would only slightly increase. So for your 2 positions that I'm proposing, assistant supervisor, and I worded it different here, off-site coordinator, but it's also a supervisor. The increases in their salary would be pretty limited to, and in benefits to less than $1,000 each. So that's $2,000. Where you get into more cost is that if you create a new permanent position for your registered early childhood educators, they jump pay bands, and that's a fairly significant change. As well, they've never had benefits other than the 17% that we calculate on a regular basis for our part-time. So their increase in benefit costs is a significant cost increase, and that is also why in the past, historically, they've chosen not to have as many permanent positions in the program, because you can see that cost is significant. So that potential staff from the untrained, or from the trained pool would be approximately 15,000. Some of the staff who may be moving from part-time to full-time would have an increase in their benefit costs as well. And then also to cover your costs, of filling the office hours, we would use our untrained staff or part-time staff to cover that. So I think a total, or an approximate total, once you move everybody and filter them all up the pay grids, would be approximately $72,000, which is a great deal of money, but I think it adds a lot of stability to the programs. We can help offset some of these costs potentially by some rate increases. So I'd first like to start by showing you the rates across the local area. So for Goderich, we have infants being charged $56. Walkerton do not have infants. North Huron charges $47.50 for infants, and Listowel is charging $48 for their infant childcare. Toddlers in Goderich are $50.75, Walkerton $45, and North Huron we're sitting at $43, and Listowel is below us at $41. Our preschool program is Goderich is $45.75, Walkerton is $43. We sit very low at $37, and Listowel is at $39. So I'm putting forward to you a proposal of an increase from $1 to $3 per family a day, so not a huge increase. The county did come and meet with us today to talk about our goals and objectives in the future, and they felt that these were reasonable increases, even though they've always provided that stability funding, and they appreciate and recognize that you as council have not raised the rates for the last 2 to 3 years. This is estimating that we are full. This does not include our hopeful new 16 spaces up at Sacred Heart, but we could increase our revenues by $81,000 a year by this rate increase that I'm proposing to you here. So if you think $72,000 for the possible changes to the restructuring, and you look at $81,000, we can recoup and cover the cost for doing that. This would make our hierarchy or our pace or our structure of our department more attractive to attracting new people to come and work for our facilities, because there would be more available movement for upward movement, and it would help prepare them, it would keep the workloads more sensible for the people filling positions. And when you have 9 permanent positions versus 6 permanent positions, when people leave, you are attracting more capable people to come in underneath them. So from my opinion, the impacts would be the organization would be attractive with room for advancement. The organization would demonstrate the value and importance and security of having full-time employment with benefits. The workloads would allow attention to detail. More staff would have benefits. We would be moving from 6 to 9. It would help with staff retention and staff recruitment. And I thank you for your consideration of this report. So that's a lot of information for sure, and I welcome questions.
Thank you, Valerie. To the council, questions, concerns, comments? Go ahead, Chris.
For you, Reeve, Valerie, yeah, this is big and I understand. I was told by a past counselor that a bit of the history, you know, because when we first heard about this at the last meeting, you know, it's a bit of a shock and awe thing, but I was told that things were tough before you came, and you straightened the ship and you know, made it sort of a neutral as far as expenses, and I think we all applaud you at that. So my little thoughts though, there's some people potentially would be moving up. Are you replacing those people? Because I didn't hear that.
Because we have such a large amount of untrained supply, and we have trained supply who are currently working regular full-time hours for us. So they're not even in our hierarchy other than as supply and additional staff. So we do have people who will be able to fill those hours who are already currently working for you. Does this make us more attractive, and would we be able to recruit more people? I still feel that this does make us more attractive and more able to recruit new people, because it shows that the township is very supportive of childcare and have taken steps to make it more, I don't even know how to describe it. In your other departments, for example, roads, you do have a structure where there's the head of public works, and you have supervisors, and then you have foremen. But we haven't instituted that in our department, it's kind of just been left alone to just kind of survive. So it actually makes it a more functional department. So you do have the people to fill it. Are they new people, bringing in new people? No.
Other questions or comments? Go ahead, Paul.
Yes, I just noticed, and I commend you for the work that you've been doing. I was just wondering, of the 11 positions, there were 12 that Walker didn't have any in the infant position. I'm just curious, we're the lowest one in everyone except one, we're
For
the
the
lowest one
fees?
instead, for fees per day.
Yeah.
And you say you work with the county on that. Are these other places like Garbage working with the county too? Like they said they are happy with the way you're keeping the fees down?
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't see where some of the other ones are, maybe like, would that affect you from getting money from the county is what I'm coming at?
Yeah, and I asked them that today with the subsidy dollars, so if we increase our fee rates for the parents, will that create a conflict for the county? And they said that should not be a problem, that they intend to make sure that the families are supported. I would highlight that Goderich has high fees, I believe, but they still operate at a large operating deficit. And it's
Yeah, I understand.
And so what Chris has alluded to, we have become pretty much revenue neutral in that all of our programs combined offset most of our operating costs. So I'm not proposing to go as high as Goderich. So I realize, and I'm sorry that I didn't do that I didn't include what I was proposing for the rates other than it's kind of, they're proposed in there. So so the 50, 45, 40, 40. That also makes strategic gaps here. Try and get us back to that one. So in there you see that I'm proposing that we move, say, infants from $47.50 to $50. So that's an increase of $2.50 a day. So it still doesn't make us unreasonable. We're still we're not at the 57 the other one was at, or 56 for Goderich. So we still have room to increase our rates as we move forward. And actually, in conversation with the social services department today, she's beginning to be more supportive of the regular increases annually rather than us having to jump by $1 and $3 a day for certain families, just to keep it more consistent for the families and that it's not as big a shock. But she also felt that these were reasonable to put forward for the 2020 budget, if you were so inclined to do so.
And is there any chance, I see there's a waiting list of 40 on one of them. Are North Huron children, do they get priority over, let's say, next door neighbors or?
I'm not sure
Maybe
where you
from
see the
subgroups?
waiting list.
Oh, I thought it said room for 40 or something on the,
Oh, because of
Infant.
capacity,
oh, okay, maybe I missed something.
sorry. Infants, sorry, I would need to go back to their numbers.
Infant for, you showed the other ones are full, but you say you have a waiting list of 40 infants on the infants. You have,
Okay,
somewhere I saw that on
well, we do have a huge waiting list for our
Yes,
infants.
Yes.
The priority, we do have a wait list policy for our programs, and it does include those that are full-time versus part-time. It does include those who have siblings or other children in care in our programs getting a priority over others. We have not instituted a policy yet, or at this point, that identifies which township you live in and whether or not they would be given a priority over another. And they do come from quite a wide area. We service a very wide area.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Chris.
through you, Rave. We realize how much responsibility you've taken on. Will one of these individuals be trained? I'm just thinking, say you got sick, will there be someone that could just jump right in?
I hope so. I believe that the two positions would allow us to further train and enhance the staff that I have. Do I already have staff that I can leave in charge as a designate when I leave for holidays and stuff? I have excellent staff. Have they been trained in all of the proposal writing and how we do our license applications and use our childcare licensing system? And some of the more abstract pieces, no, but could they run your programs? They would run them very well. And Dwayne has always been a big advocate and teaching us that the ones that take the training and show the interest, when, you know, hopefully they can be recruited to fill the position when I retire. But like if there was someone outside our North Huron area that applied and had better skills, we might look at them too. But this is a great way to train them. Also, before I would retire, I think we bring a different proposal back where someone might job shadow for a couple of months or a month to help with some of that paperwork piece.
Anybody else? So Val, a couple questions. If you're restructuring and you're putting more management in place and you're going to divide their time between office and floor, which you definitely have enough, because of numbers and government regulations, you're still gonna have enough people by pulling part-time people in to cover off that time they're not on the floor.
Yes, I was talking to Wayne Carson about this because the way life in daycare works is we have a huge need before school starts and we have a huge need after school starts for staffing, and we have enough staff to do that. How I vision filling those positions and scheduling hours is that those are mostly split shifts, and I try to make sure that we're attractive to those people working not permanent positions by giving them at least 7 hours a day. And so this would allow us to use the time between 9 and 3 to bring in more supply people and give them more hours, which makes them happier, and then allows the regular people in that position to go to the paperwork.
Great.
So we have enough bodies.
Great, totally understandable. Question from a business point of view. You have 40 kids that are on the wait list, basically. If you were to hire people to do the 40, could you pull that off, or is that a situation where you have to open up another site, live, let's say? With us giving the changes you're making and everything, you were before us before and said that, you know, from a career point of view, we didn't pay very well, et cetera, so we're kind of trying to take care of that. Yeah, and at the same time, we have this need over in I'm gonna pick on Blythe, in Blythe. So, if you have 40 kids waiting, and then could you open up a facility in Blythe? Now, do you think there'd be a better response? You know, as I know already, that there is a high demand for people in your expertise. But is that changing any at all for us?
So a couple of things. We, in talking with the county today as well, I alluded to the fact that we have counselors very interested in the idea of opening in Blythe, and they are looking at continued expansion of childcare for Huron County. It's on their priority list. They wanted to know a possible timeline that we were looking at, and I think during our strategic planning, we were kind of aiming more towards 2021 so we could get this done. And they are looking for us to finalize these 16 spots up at Sacred Heart. So currently we're looking at taking additional 16 children into our programs. So that should help alleviate and make room to take in these infants. What I talked to them today about is infants are the ones mainly on our list, and I would love to be able to change our license so we could take in more infants, but the dilemma with infants is you have to have separate sleep rooms for them versus just like the rest of the kids, and that would require expansion or a build on, and we didn't think that's very feasible at this point. But we did talk about a possible mixed age grouping that could possibly accommodate infants in the Blythe area, and that way we could accommodate families with, say, an infant, a preschooler, and maybe a school-age child, because, so it looks a little differently, but the lucky thing was they said we're Exeter Way, they are looking at implementing that kind of setup, and it's a change from our regular ratio, so it would be different, and I don't know how it would affect us funding-wise, or how much it costs to run that way. It's more like a family grouping. So that's one way we could eliminate some of the wait list too with the infants. But also I can take more infants more quickly with these proposed changes because we have the 16 sites that I'm hoping to get open up at Sacred Heart. So then that opens more toddler spaces so you can push them through a little bit faster. It sounds sad, I gotta push them through the baby room to get them through faster. But they all have an extensive wait list. But we're not alone in that, all centers have that.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Did that answer the
It
question?
did, yes, yes. Any other questions or comments for Val? Seeing none, I do have a mover and a seconder, so I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you.
So the CAO has no report, correspondence. 8.1, a letter from the Royal Canadian Legion. Sean's gonna talk to this. Your name is on the side of this one?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Very straightforward. The Legion has come and requested a road closure. They want the portion of John Street and diagonal in proximity to the cenotaph closed for the Remembrance Day services. It's a very reasonable request. Public Works has resources available to handle the road closure, barricade installation, and the like. And they have done since actually asked them to fill out the proper, the new road closure request forms, which they did today, so
Great.
we don't see any issue.
Okay, I'm gonna read the motion that the Council Township of North Huron hereby approve the request from the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 180, Wingham, Ontario, to close Veterans Road, John Street from Center Street to Josephine Street, Wingham for the Remembrance Day service on Monday, November 14th, 2019, from 7 a.m. until 12 p.m. Do I have a mover? I have Rick and I have Paul. And further that the Huron County Highways, North Huron Fire Department, EMS, and OPP Police Service be advised of the closure. Gentlemen, it was Rick and Paul. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. 8.2, letter from Ted Komisky, Chair, demand the right coalition of municipalities, RE request to send letter to local MPP for support for granting municipalities the right to approve landfills in Ontario. That the Council Township of North Huron hereby directs staff to send a letter to the local MPP in support of granting Ontario municipalities the right to approve landfills within their boundaries. Do I have a mover? I have Chris and I have Paul again. Carson, could you talk to this one?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So, with this agenda item, you would have saw the excerpt from the April 16th, 2018 council meeting. And basically, this was a request that came through, and the Demand the Right Coalition, they were looking for support from other municipalities in order to give municipalities the right to approve where landfills are set up within their jurisdiction. So Ted Komisky, he's the chair of Demand the Right Coalition, and he's also the mayor of Ingersoll, and this is something that they are dealing with right now. So a motion was passed in 2018 to support their movement, and now the email that was attached to the agenda item, they came back and they're requesting that municipalities who were in support send letters to their local MPPs to advocate for this. And so basically what they've attached is a draft letter that they sent to their local MPP, which is Jeff Gurick, and they're proposing that if North Huron's in favor, that a similar letter be sent tailored to our local MPP, so it would be Lisa Thompson, and to advocate with them.
I just want to follow up with that, just so I've kind of forgot when it was a big deal when I was on council before, but we cannot just obviously open up dumps wherever we want. when our dump gets full, I believe this happened in Central Urine or something, where you were just out of luck, and I forget what they did with that, not Central, the one over by Holmesville. They had to close it.
In here in Landfill.
The mid-year in landfill.
Yeah, that was Landfill.
So what happened with that one? Did they
It's
truck
a-
it somewhere? or-
Well, it's a recycling station now,
Mhm.
so Goddard was out there, Huron East, Central Huron, and I believe they had to find alternative waste management options.
Yeah. So does anybody know whether they've got a dump, or are they trucking it out to some country out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on bins, claiming it to be plastic?
Philippines.
See, I'm not sure either. I don't know the answer to
truck,
that.
but I don't know where.
Yeah, yeah. That was the polite way of saying it. Oh, what's the council's, conversation or questions or comments? Go ahead, Trev.
You know, for me, the comment is, the AMO would be an ideal spot. They are the advocate for municipalities in Ontario. In my mind, is that not the place where this needs to go? Like we can send all the responses we want to our local MPPs, but the AMO has a direct line right to the ministry. Like, in my mind, this is a place where if you want a delegation with the ministry to get this on the agenda, AMO is a place to do it. And us saying we want it sent to our MPPs, I don't know that that's the place. I think we can do it. Is that gonna change anything tomorrow? I don't think it's gonna change anything. I think the place to go would be AMO to see if AMO is willing to support this initiative and start that discussion there.
So Paul and Chris, would you accept it from that?
So the other piece I just left out too, that's in the email, is that the letter would be sent to the local MPP, and copy would be approvalrights2019@gmail.com, which is the email for this demand the right motion coalition. So whether they are taking the combined letters and moving forward them through AMO, I don't know. The letter didn't specify, but that is, they're definitely collecting them to compile as one.
Yeah, I think, in my mind, I'm all for the supporting of it. I'm all for sending a letter to the MPP. I just think that, communication back to them that says, if we need to get something on the minister's plate, or have a direct impact to staff at the ministry, AMO's the place to go. They talk to a lot more ministers than we do, and MPPs. They have a direct line to that succession.
So would you suggest then to make an amendment on the proposed motion to add AMO to at least they'll get one then?
I'm okay with that. I guess my quick concern though is it's them that wants this. This gentleman's the spearhead of this issue because he's got a direct impact to it today.
Okay.
North Huron doesn't have an impact to this today.
No.
My suggestion is that we support the initiative. My comment is more is that I don't know that they're hitting the right place.
Leave it up to them, you're saying? Okay, so no amendment. We're just gonna keep your motion as is, and we're gonna let those guys take it to council. That's what I understood,
That's what I think we should do, but
and I agree with that.
Or make sure they are.
Yeah.
Contact them, find out.
I just had a meeting on Saturday with, and Jamie McGarvey is the president of AMO, and he was in attendance, so I can reach out to Jamie and get some information with respect to where AMO is going with this.
and maybe they've already communicated to them. We don't know. It just to me it seems like it should be an emo issue if it's a big issue overall.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the motion, all in favor? Carries. 8.3, Huron County Planning and Development, RE, notice of the application for consent for severance file number C77-19 then C 78-19, and then C 79-19. Owner 1647780 Ontario Inc. Applicant Ron Clark, Municipality of Morris Turnberry. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby has no objections to the consent file C 77-19, C 78-19, and C 79-19, and direct staff to send correspondence to the County of Huron Planning and Development Department forming of such a motion. Do I have a mover? I have Chris, seconder. I have Paul. Questions or comments? Yep. Yep. Okay, seeing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Oh, council report, Reeves activity report. Again, another busy 2 weeks. I spoke at the Lions Club before Thanksgiving here in Wingham. I had a great time with the boys and girls. The county endorsed the Blythe Theatre's expansion ideas, and we're actually headed to Toronto tomorrow, Dwayne and I, with the theatre to do a presentation before Minister Scott. It's a callback from a previous conversation we had with that department when we were in Ottawa. It was one of the presentations. It's always really cool and nice when you get a call back. That means somebody's listening and kind of looking at what we're doing. So we're, and Lisa Thompson is going to be joining us tomorrow too, our representative. So we're so grateful she could take the time for that. Trevor and I spoke to the grade 5s at the local school up here, the elementary school up here, and maybe Trevor wanted to expand on that was quite a little get together. The dam committee has had a good meeting here the other day, and it's good fact-based last week, and they're moving forward with their discussions. I've only been to one of the museum committee. I don't know why I'm missing those. Maybe I'm away those days. Maybe I'm in Toronto talking to some minister. So everything's moving along. Dwayne and I have been having meetings with it, very preliminary meetings with people that may be interested in Hutton Heights and a few other locations here in town. We'll be bringing that to council when it develops to the point where it's worth council's time. That's my report. So, let's move on to council member reports, verbal or written updates from members who sit on boards or committees. Who would like to speak first? Trev?
So yeah, so it was actually, I just want to follow up to that discussion at Maitland River with the grade 5s. There was actually some grade 6s in there as well. It was interesting to know there was a lot of questions that I would not have expected a grade 5 to ask. And not a bad question, it just, they're a prime example of questions. Do you really feel that we in Wingham can support 5 gas stations? They asked the question. They asked that question. I would not have thought a grade 5 would know that. So, you know, it just opens the door, in my opinion, to the discussions of what youth could bring to the discussion that we have every 2 weeks. So, you know, I think that's, you know, now there was some questions about what we get paid and other ones that really were what they were, but I think ultimately there was questions that they wanted clarity about how we operate. And, you know, me and the Reeve found very early that they don't care about the boundary. They could care less. Because there was questions about, well, what happens about, do you guys look after Lower Town? Because those kids would think of it as Wingham. They wouldn't know it's Morris Turnberry. They wouldn't know anything about that. So, you know, they're looking at it as a community, not as individual municipalities. And I think to me, that's the most I got out of that conversation is they look at it at a different lens than even their adults, even their parents. They look at it as a different lens. So it was I was glad that I could support that from a friend at the teacher at the school who's a temporary there, so it was nice that I could support that. The other comment I wanted to bring is myself, Carson, and Amanda were at a meeting this past Wednesday that deals with the community safety plan. So that is a requirement under the government of Ontario. The request that requires every municipality to have a community safety plan initiated and implemented by December of 2020. So 14 months to initiate, develop, initiate, and implement a plan that has to relate to that relates to the municipality, and it has to have certain criteria on who's on it. So for example, you have to have a police services board member on it. Well, we have communities who don't have police services boards. So I think there's some opportunities I think we've come from this meeting knowing that there's opportunities that we can try to do a lot of the legwork as this community group, this workshop group, and provide a template to municipalities that help us get to the point where, you know, we're all going to be asking the same people the same questions. United Way, Children's Services, Victim Services, a whole bunch of groups that are out there, we're all going to be asking for the same data. So how can we collectively get this data and push it out to these groups and make sure that each of these plans are impactful, but also that they get community buy-in? Because there is a requirement to ensure that they're public and that they're made sure that they're provided with public opinion. So you need to have public sessions and that type of stuff. So I think as we go through this, you know, we're going to be having meetings quite frequently, but I think council needs to be aware of this plan that is going to become front and center over the next 6 to 10 months, because we're going to be required as council to review the plan and provide a bylaw that says it's going to be implemented, and we need to ensure how that's going to look like. So I think, personally, in my opinion, I think there's opportunities to share. You know, share some resources with other neighboring municipalities, but that needs to be seen on how that looks like. And I think as we go through this plan, I think we'll find that there's more communities that want to do that, because we're all going to be doing the same thing.
So Trevor, if I can just follow up on that again, going back to my previous council days, we actually had the county, and I was the representative that sat on North Hurons, and we had a mock disaster and went through the whole protocol because of the hurricane or whatever it was that hit Goderich. Marty, are you aware of anything like that?
That's something separate. So that's the emergency
Preparedness drill.
Okay.
Yeah, that's emergency
So
management.
that's something different.
Something different?
So
Okay.
this is that is a requirement under the employee or emergency preparedness, that you are required to do one of those mock drills every year or every 2 years.
Every year.
Every year?
There's one scheduled for November.
Right. So it's usually in October, November.
Okay.
This requirement is it's a community safety plan. It's a plan to show how it's more than be emergency preparedness. It's how to make your community better and safer from in all aspects.
So will somebody from Sunlight bring in a presentation to us, or can you follow up with
Well,
that?
staff, this community group, this group is going to be directing staff to provide something, but we'll be giving more information to council as we get down. We only had the first meeting, so
Okay.
it's something that's going to be something that's be coming to this table more than once over the next 14 months.
Yeah, I was just concerned about duplicating, so we're not.
No.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else, Trev?
Nope, that's
Okay.
it.
Go ahead, Paul.
We had our third museum meeting, and the members are up to speed now. They look like they're happy. And this past one, we had Elizabeth French Gibson. She spoke to us. She's the head curator from Huron County, Goderich. And it's great. They've been mandated that they have to help out smaller museums. so she's gonna be a real benefit for us. So now the members are going out to look at the museums, the smaller museums, and see how they have storage, because as you know, we're hoping to be able to go from a big area to a small area, and just find out ways how it can be done and whatnot, so I'll keep you up to speed with what's going on with it. It looks good. Did I miss anything with that?
Yeah.
Through you, your worship, just that at the next meeting, they will be touring. They actually will be touring the museum across the road, museum building, and they will be touring the train station, just to kind of get a visual idea of what type of space we're looking at, and Mr. Kyvan Hogan will be taking some measurements of actual space that's used, because we all know from our tour that there's areas of the museum where there's large open areas that's not being used in the middle. So they're actually looking at how much storage space this case or this case takes to see if it will fit. So they're looking at it quite seriously and in more detail now as to what's really required, and exploring different types of storage systems as Councillor Hepper reported.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Chris.
Because I was absent last meeting, I wanted to bring my thoughts about this. I went to the arena there when the county was having their little workshop on their official plan. And I found it a little bit heavy-handed, to say heavy-handed. They have their way, and I don't know if they're really gonna listen. You had different stations with different, like housing was one, and agriculture was another, and blah, blah, blah. But the housing one, she kept on talking about all the different types of housing, and we heard some of it earlier this evening. And that seemed to be the priority. And I said, look at, we have jobs that we have, we need people for jobs. The jobs are available, we need housing for that. And she went, oh. Like, they're forgetting the other aspect of housing, which I feel is very, very important. And then the other one with the agricultural end, we're gonna hear a whole lot more of this later on, but the natural heritage, I brought it up, and the fact that they want 30% of your land to be trees. Oh no, that's just a goal, a fantasy goal. No, it's not. It's in the legislation, so that means you're gonna take it someday. Oh no, we're not thinking that at all. No, I don't trust that at all. So they've got to understand what they're really passing in that, what they really passed actually in that regard, and they just don't. So the other stations were fine, you throw in some comments and they seem to be listening, but I just hope they listen. They've had a few of these meetings now and public sessions, and I just hope they're listening.
So my understanding is they have to bring this before each lower tier to look over and agree to. That was my understanding how it has to work. So it's filtering down to it, yes. Like it's filtering down to us. Dwayne, could you maybe help me with that, please? Yeah.
So our 5 years, so every 5 years, your official plan is to be reviewed. I've had discussions with the planning department, our 5 years scheduled for 2020. So as part of that 5-year review, they'll be bringing forward a presentation regarding the natural heritage plan, or I think they renamed it, whatever the name is. So they'll be coming, and I've had some preliminary discussions. Well, I was talking to Laura, and now I'm flipping over and talking to Monica in terms of how we bring that forward. I think that there's some, I think there's some ideas, I think they have some ideas in terms of how they want to bring it forward. I want to have some more discussions with them, maybe, it's the way to term it, in terms of when and in terms of how we bring that forward to make sure that it's very informative. And I think it needs to be treated in a separate, there needs to be a separate conversation around that. And I think what the plan is to make it part of the full open discussion, but I think that needs to be broken out a little bit more. So Monica's just joined us relatively.
It was
so I'm
Monica
sure-
that I was dealing with that night.
Okay.
And another thing, the mapping, that's good. No
Yeah.
one's gonna argue about that, but it's lumped in, and it should be separated out. Because it's crucial, there's no doubt about it. No one can argue about it, but it should be split out from what I was just talking about.
So that would be part of, won't be this year, it'll be part of next year,
Next
in
year,
terms
okay.
of your 5-year review.
Yeah, we do have a say in it there somewhere. Okay, any other comments from members? Go ahead, Rick.
Last week, we were on a tour to the nuclear waste management site. It's quite interesting, I learned a lot. You know, I didn't believe how much I didn't know up there.
Where you're going.
Paul, if you just wanna touch
And so on that, there are some more, there's another tour date has been added, I believe it's November the 29th.
Right.
November the 29th. So I believe you were sent out dates, and they've now since added another date. But yes, I joined that tour as well, and it was very informative, very high security.
Oh, yeah. You're not.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I went through so many scanners and, yeah, it was, and rightly so.
Maybe one won't be a Wednesday morning, no, we don't know. Anyone else like to speak about anything? Go ahead, Paul.
Yes, I'm just asking council if they'd consider sending a letter to the Legion, thanking them for commemorating the veterans on the main street of Wingham. They put all the pictures up, and John Cullen did an excellent job there, so I just asked if we could maybe send a letter. We could talk to this fella.
Yeah, I don't think we need a motion for that, but that would just be direction to council.
I'm just asking.
Staff. Yep. Yep. We'll do that for sure. Okay, notice of motions. Anybody have a notice of motion? Seeing none, bylaws. A bylaw to authorize the agreement with Wilders Cleaning and Restoration Limited for the provision of janitorial services. Bylaw number 90. Can I have a mover? Can I have a seconder? I got Paul, I got Trevor and Paul. All in favor? Carried.
We can read it, read.
You got it. A bylaw, yeah, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 32, 2008 as amended of the Township of North Huron. Do I have a mover? I have Anita and I have Rick. All in favor? Passes. 11.3, a bylaw to designate locations in the Township of North Huron as a community improvement project area. Do I have a mover? I have Rick and I have
Point.
Trevor. Yep.
Not point, sorry, question.
Yep.
Again, remember I mentioned it about the map and upgrading it, so would it apply here as well, or will it be done automatically?
So Reed Bailey and myself won't sign those agreements until the changes that we were directed to make.
All in favor? Carries. I lost track of where I was.
4.
11.4? Yeah, 11.4. A bylaw to amend the community improvement plan for Township of North Huron. Do I have a mover? I have Anita. Do I have a seconder? I have Paul. Everybody in favor? Carries. Announcements. A special council meeting, year-to-date budget review will be held on Friday, October 25th, 2019, 9 a.m. in the North Huron Council Chambers. The Town Hall public meeting will be held on Wednesday, October 30th, 2019, from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the Blythe Memorial Lower Hall.
So excuse me, that was.
Yeah. Yeah.
You said 7 to 8?
Yes, p.m.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to look at that one too. Yeah, go ahead.
So just for council's information. So our procedure bylaw has a requirement in it that you need to hold a minimum of one meeting with the public. And it's an opportunity for the public to address council, bring forward any questions, issues, or concerns that they wish to address. So it's a council meeting in the form of that all the council will be present, and senior management team will be available as well. So it's an opportunity to hear from the public in terms of what their issues or concerns are. And I won't get into the details, just in terms of, they have the opportunity to ask their question, and there's time limitations around it. I'll just leave it at that. And it's set aside, it's 1 hour, okay? Just in terms of, I believe we have a facilitator lined up who will then, so this is about the third year, Trevor?
Yes.
You'll know, this is the third year that we did it, or we're doing it. In the first year, there were, lessons learned, if you wanna call it that. In the second year, we brought forward a facilitator, and the facilitator was, the member of the public would get up, present their question, it would be addressed through the facilitator, and then depending on the question, it either went to council, or it may be directed to senior management team member, depending on the question is. So, but there is a procedural bylaw requirement that we do hold this. And so we'll proceed with the procedural bylaw as it is. If council wishes to change that, certainly, the bylaw can be amended. But we're proceeding on the basis that it's in the procedure bylaw, so we're making sure that we meet that requirement.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So you advertise this in all the different papers and what have you?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, through your worship, so it's been advertised, we have flyers out around the different municipal buildings, and it's been advertised in the local papers, and it will continue to be advertised until the meeting is held.
Any other questions?
Just my comment to Reeve, I think it would probably be in the best interest of council at least to get a copy of what topics or questions that have been proposed in the past, just so that they're informed about what questions have been asked, and if those questions come up again, then the issue can be, have they not been answered, have they not been answered substantively, whatever the case may be. I think it would be just important that staff be here, that council be aware of the fact that we are a new council. With that information, I think it would be best to have that information as we have it. Oh no, they're gonna ask me how old you are.
Public consultation for the strategic planning meeting will be held on Thursday, November 7, 2019, 7 to 9 o'clock at the Belgrade Community Center. Just a quick question to the CEO. Are we gonna have, is the council themselves gonna see this and discuss this before then?
We received a draft copy, staff are currently going through it and having a look at it. We're to get comments back by this Friday, so I'll talk to the
Yep.
consultant.
Okay, yeah, just so I don't wanna go before the community without knowing what it looks like.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically the timeline now is, SMT is looking through it right now, sharing with them our comments, and then they're going to provide it back to us prior to that public consultation date. So you will have an opportunity to see it, and then the process is the public is going to share their input, and North Huron staff will be developing a survey that we will be promoting as well. So there will be that feedback loop as well, and then ultimately that feedback will be incorporated. Council will get to add additional input, and then it will be developed a final plan, and that final plan will come back to council for approval.
Yeah, just so long as before we go public, I think everybody would like to read what the public's doing.
Yep, and there will definitely be that
That's all.
opportunity.
Yep, thank you kindly. The next House and Dam Committee meeting will be held on Wednesday, November 20th, 4 p.m. at the council chambers here. The next Museum Committee will be held on Thursday, November 21st, here at the council meetings. Other business, anyone?
I'm just wondering, is there a media training thing on the 28th, or is that?
Yes, so, through you,
Yeah.
so that was one that you personally said you weren't able to attend.
Probably, I'm speaking for others.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So five members of council said that they were able to attend, so they are registered for that. And so that's October 28th at, in Central Huron, and then that's a full day session. With the morning, Red Brick Communications is doing a media training session, and then in the afternoon, Dave Clark of the county is providing emergency management training, crisis communication session.
That's good for others.
I put my name in for
Yeah, you did.
that?
The only, remember, just to clarify, the only two who said they were unable was Deputy Reeves Syke and Councilor Palmer.
I feel better now. Because I was wondering too. Okay, confirmatory, there's no closed session tonight, so confirmatory bylaw. Bylaw number 101-2019 being a bylaw of the Township of North Huron to confirm October 21st, 2019 actions of the Council of the Township of North Huron. That bylaw 101-2019 being the bylaw to confirm the October 21st, 2019 actions of the Council of the Township of North Huron be introduced and read a first, second, and third and final time, signed by the reeve and the clerk, and engrossed in the bylaw books. Do I have a mover? I have Chris. Do I have a seconder? I have Rick. All in favor? Carries. Adjournment, that the Council of Township of North Huron agrees being no other further business, the council, the meeting hereby adjourns at 9:05. Trevor, seconder. You guys all sleeping or what? Rick? All in favor? Carries. Thank you, everyone.